3, 2, 1.
今夜もミュージック君へのラッキー笑いあって抱き合って幸せにほらなれるように
Do you want to introduce it or should I?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another EWB on the Weeb Club. This one's gonna make me want to die.
Yeah.
Because if you couldn't tell from whatever the title is, we're gonna be watching Mother's Basement's JoJo Part video. Why you should maybe skip JoJo Parts. And I think something we have to talk about with this is not only the actual video itself, but because Mother's Basement is such a big creator and has such a pull in not necessarily the anime community, but in the larger, like,
Yes.
I guess, normie community of, like, people who are, like, maybe passively into anime but aren't really into it.
Yes.
This video made a lot of waves and a lot of people were talking about it. And that's kind of why I think, like, this episode's gonna be a little bit different because we're not only gonna have to talk about this 30-minute long video, but also I hate saying, like, the cultural significance of this video because that's stupid, but you know, if the anime community or whatever was a larger, like, it made an impact and it had a lot of people talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we also need to talk about just, like, not only the Western sphere, but also, like, how things are in Japan, because Mother's Basement does, except the difference is that he's, like, okay, so I have two things primarily to say about Mother's Basement. So one is that, like, as a creator, does he say stupid shit? Yes. Does he probably get way more criticism than he should? Well, honestly, I mean, you know, if you wanted to go that route, maybe not enough anime, like, most of the people doing, like, calling him out are stupid is the problem, and he's not as, like, he's demonized as, like, oh, he's the worst, when really, like, I mean, you know, Mother's Basement probably has decent videos, which I can't say about, you know, Manime Matt or Korwa Eden or, like, a lot of the creators we've talked about. Like, you know, Mother's Basement, like, you know, he's, you know, kind of head-ass, but he does have a lot of subs for a reason. Like, he's able to, like, he was the first person analyzing openings, even if he, you know, didn't listen to them. Or recognize that there are words being said that have purpose, but he still, like, was the person, like, who started doing that and made people pay more attention to that. That's a good thing, even if, you know, there was some issues with his execution of it, but, like, looking back.
Right.
And my biggest problem with him is how he'll, like, and we'll see that in this video, but he will basically, like, take things and twist them to a narrative that he is trying to spin, like, because he has a history in games journalism, so you know, he's a journalist. He knows how to twist things to paint a particular narrative, even if that narrative isn't accurate to reality, which is my personal biggest problem with him. And it's happened in this video. It's happened, like, and going to what Vindy said about, like, Mother's Basement's influence. If you look at a certain video on Super Money Hop's channel, in which he talks about how Evangelion influenced the Metal Gear Solid series or something absurd like that, like, his main consultant for, because Super Money Hop, he's just watched Eva because it came out on Netflix. Like, he's not an anime guy. He's like what Vindy described, someone with the best of passing interest in anime, but he knows Mother's Basement, who doesn't just have a passing interest in anime. He just has a passing knowledge of, like, how it works, because he really doesn't know that much. Right. And but Super Bunny Hop doesn't know that because he knows even less. So now he's trusted him and painted this continually ignorant picture of Evangelion's influence in an absurd context to an audience that isn't going to know better. And I don't like that. And so, go ahead.
Well, I would say that, like, here's what I would say about it to just continue that idea is that, like, I think that, you know, he probably does get a little bit too much shit. But it's like, okay, there are creators smaller than him making way worse content in every way than he makes.
That still criticize him.
Yeah, that still criticize him. And so he definitely gets criticism because he's popular. However, I do think that with the amount of influence he has in terms of bringing new people into the anime scene and being, like, a voice for people who are very new to anime, which I feel like almost at this point it's almost how he markets himself and his channel, right? Like, he works with Game Theory on Game Theory's anime.
There
videos.
would be no reason to make this video if he had 10,000 subs. Because the people who would be watching someone who has like 10,000 subscribers care more about anime and anime analysis, so they probably fucking watched or read most of JoJo already. Right. But if he's able to appeal to these normie crowds who maybe heard of JoJo and maybe haven't gotten into it yet.
And I would say the biggest difference is, and I don't want to say Mother's Basement doesn't care about anime. He's an anime-tuber. He also does.
He definitely cares about, like, you know, and he likes, you know, there's series that he likes a lot. Like, you know, but, even if, but he still says these dumb things. What were we going to say?
Well, I would say, I think it's telling that, you know, if we talk about larger anime creators, none of them would say something as stupid as, like, the idea of this video. Like, there's a reason Anime Man literally responded to his Mother's Basement watchword that I'm sure we'll talk about, like the image, with the word no. You know? Because to someone like, you know, and I'm sure this applies to all of, like, the Trash Taste podcast, or even, you know, someone like, I think his name's like Lost Pause, whatever the fuck that guy's name is, right? Yeah. Like, even though they're bigger, they market themselves towards people who would consider themselves anime fans, right? And I'm not gonna say the Mother's Basement doesn't, but I think Mother's Basement's market is primarily people getting into anime that have, again, that passing interest. And because, you know, that's who he worked, like, he worked with Super Bunny Hop or Matt Pat, and when you work with Super Best Friends Play, and when you work with people like that, right,
who aren't in anime but are like anime adjacent, right?
When you do with people who would do an entire Naruto podcast with one person who has no experience with it and one person who played the Ninja Storm game as his experience with it, right? So people who clearly do not care about, like, good, actual, real discussion around these series.
Or respect of the series that they're talking about, right. Yeah, there's nothing like that there.
Your market is so different that people will listen to others, and that's why I think a video like this needs to be made. Because, or not, but, like, people need to, like, Mother's Basement's criticism in that aspect is good, because it what it does do is it means anyone who starts to get farther into AniTube and anime past that initial first person you see is going to learn that Mother's Basement's full of shit a lot of the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's also, like, he gets a shit ton of criticism that, like, isn't deserved. Like, people like to give him shit for his girlfriend being a cosplayer who posts, you know, nudes and all this other stuff that's, like, not really deserved.
Yeah, that's not really relevant. Yeah, and to his content, and, like, that just, I don't see a point in complaining about it. Like, you know, that's their relationship. That's how, you know, what she does. Like, whatever. That's why I don't see a reason to get mad over that. Like, I mean, you know, if you're mad about, like, his, like, apparently he did his, like, Valentine's video where he mentions the fact that he has a girlfriend in a way that's, like, condescending. Like, okay, I can see being not happy with that, but, like, you know, that's different than, like, actually harassing them or which they've gotten. Like, that's not. No, like, we don't. I mean, I don't even think he's a bad person. I just think he's dumb at times, and he can make some really shitty takes. And with a level of influence that he has, like, that should be very critically viewed. But, you know, I highly doubt the people who are criticizing him are really, like, good at it. Because let's be real, like, how many good, like, critiques of YouTubers are there outside of, like, the EWB and maybe my Super Perpetual video? Probably not a lot, right? So.
Yeah, a lot of it is people, because, you know, the reason for that is a lot of people in AniTube are really averse to ever speaking their actual mind and want to be as scared of actual conflict as possible. So they'll make tweets or talk behind everyone's back in Discord instead of going out and saying what they actually think. And I do think we should talk before we get to the video as well about the reception to the video, just, like, with what we can see.
It's like 50-50 likes, dislikes, so not very well received by YouTube standards.
Yeah, I would say 13,000 likes to 10,000 dislikes is kind of crazy.
Yeah, okay, not 50-50, but still way closer than usual.
Yeah, like 10,000 dislikes on a video is a lot, right? And this is something I think is interesting. And there's a point that someone's made before, but, like to dislike is a lot different because people can click on a video and maybe not watch it and just click like or dislike. But comments are going to be people who watch, you know, like, to comment, like, you know, it's also a metric. And I'm looking through the comments right now, and the first, like, 20 comments are all negative.
And those are the ones with the most likes, right?
Literally, yeah, all negative. Some people making fun of him, like, you should start watching this video at 9 minutes, then 2:35, then 12:44, then to 3 minutes, but only for 30 seconds, then back to 1 minute, right? people saying, like, just watch the show in order. Why is that such a difficult task? Like, the comments are all... Like, I'm sure there are positive comments, but so many of these... Like, when I go through the comments, okay, the first comment that is hearted by Mother's Basement, the first comment with a heart from Mother's Basement is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18,
Jesus
19
Christ.
comments down is the first comment that they hearted, and it's a joke about something said in the video. It's not even saying they agree with them.
Sad.
And then you keep going, and it goes back to being all negative.
Yeah, so basically, nobody liked that.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that people who care did not like this video at all.
Right. So, people liking it are just, casual Mother's Basement fans, people maybe... Like, I think I agree with what he says at the very end of the video. It's just, like, everything before that kind of doesn't even really feed into what he's saying. Or maybe I'll feel differently, because I've watched this video before. But it's like... I just think what he's saying isn't best served by the way he goes about things in this video.
Yeah, and then obviously once we get into it, we'll talk about his reception and the way he handled people who criticized the video and how that's just inherently wrong, but let's get into it.
A year and a half ago, I released a video called Anime Cheat Sheet, where I gave a jokey summary of the first 4 parts of JoJo as a primer for the then newly released Part 5. The video was mainly intended to make existing fans of the series laugh, but I presented it as a way for newbies to get up to speed on the basics so they could watch the new stuff weekly. And in response to that, a certain segment of the JoJo fanbase, accounting for about 25% of folks who rated the video and maybe 2 or 3% of its total viewers, lost its goddamn mind.
I think I understand what he's saying, but I think it's really dismissive and... Okay, here's what I'm going to say about what he just said, Crafts, and let me know if you disagree or agree. I understand that what he's saying is that the people who actually click dislike are 2 to 3% of the total viewership, right? But I think, again, he's twisting this narrative and saying, oh, well, 2 to 3% of the people who watched the video didn't like it. When in reality, there were probably a bunch more people who watched it who just don't rate the YouTube videos they watch. And instead we're like, this video is fucking stupid. And we're also upset about it. But he's like, only 2 or 3% didn't like it. By that same logic, this video, it has 180,000 views and 13,000 dislikes. Oh, only 10% of the people who watched the video actually or under 10% of the people who watched this video actually liked it. Most of them they were meh on it. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah, right. Like, likes isn't, or like or dislike isn't an accurate representation of, like, the literal amount of people who like or dislike the video. Exactly, yeah.
Right,
that's just,
and that's, again, him taking something... and trying to twist this narrative to already start to dig this like he's taking the first fucking nail and starting to nail him to the cross, right? He's like, oh, the JoJo fans, dude, that small percent, they didn't like me, dude. Well,
now that percent is bigger. Sorry, Geoff.
He's getting ready to start using the G word, He's ready to start calling him out, and it's already him, like, twisting this narrative and being ridiculous. Like,
30 seconds into the video.
I'm not a big creator, but even I understand that acting like only people who rate the video actually feel strongly about it is ridiculous. Because as a YouTube viewer, I do not rate most of the videos I watch, right?
Yes.
I haven't seen this video yet, as I haven't for most of the EWBs, but this shit's already getting me fucking
no
a little feisty.
You can't be around the JoJo fandom without at least being aware of the never skip parts meme, but I realized in that moment how deadly serious some of the fans are about it. And for a long time, I felt really bad about how I made that video. I do think it's okay to start JoJo at whatever part you want, but by choosing to introduce it as a thing to help new viewers do that, instead of, say, a refresher for existing fans, I'd inadvertently created this rage-inducing 45-second barrier that was stopping the people who'd probably enjoy the jokes I was making most from getting into the video at all. But then, about a week ago, when those give-a-take that'll get your blank card taken away tweets were doing the rounds and a JoJo one popped up, I decided to say, it's still okay to skip to a part that interests you. After reading some, to be clear, not all, of the responses to that tweet, I stopped regretting the intro to that video. I realized that what I'd actually done was taken a bunch of objectively hilarious JoJo jokes and with just a few words of framing rendered them completely inaccessible to the kind of JoJo fans who say other people don't deserve to enjoy the series at all if they don't watch or read it the right way. And there's something poetic about that.
Sorry, I'm trying to let this video play because it's so long, but like there are so many things you said there that just like kind of irk me, or for example, one of them is anyone who uses JoJo jokes as and I understand Mother's Basement that you're a cringy fucking Redditor, but anyone who uses JoJo jokes is a cringy Redditor. And
well, look, he also said that after saying objectively funny, so like he's either trying to be as much cringe as possible or he just is cringe.
Look,
and it's not self-aware.
I'm not gonna say that Old Yeller is a good template for what we should do to people who use a Reddit. But I got some ideas from that and fucking what's the other one?
Why can't I remember it?
Is it of Mice and Men?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that
How did you forget that, you rat?
Sometimes I'm not gonna tell you that sometimes Redditors they want to know about the rabbits, but maybe you should tell them about them. So our.
God damn it, Vindy, you're so toxic.
I'm so funny, though. But I'm not gonna, so that's... Already, I hate JoJo jokes, but... I'm just gonna say this now. I know we'll get more into it as we go. You should not skip JoJo Parts. You shouldn't. It'd be like reading Naruto and be like, I'm gonna start Naruto at the 4th Great Ninja War. And if I enjoy it, you know what? Fucking... I'm allowed to do that. Like...
He actually brings up One Piece as an example. Like he's saying JoJo specifically, and I mean not JoJo specifically, but it's like because he talks about the way it's divided, which we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. All is, I mean, and I know that most of the people watching this agree. I know you agree. Don't skip fucking parts. It's stupid. It's a dumb idea. It doesn't work. Stop.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it, but
I don't like gatekeepers. In my opinion, which is also a fact, the only people who really aren't real fans of things are the ones who actively try to get in the way of other people enjoying those things on their own terms. Because those people no longer want what's best for the thing they like or its creator, which is exposure, support, and healthy, evolving fan discourse. They just want to turn the space around it into their own unchanging personal comfort zone. Now, of course, not everyone who objects to skipping parts is like that. Some aggressive JoJo fans, maybe even most of them, just want to make sure that people who get into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure get the maximum possible enjoyment out of it. I can definitely see where you guys are coming from. I know I personally appreciated having a friend encourage me to stick through some of the rougher episodes to get to the good stuff when the anime first aired, but not everyone's like me, and you should be cautious that you're not amplifying the voices of the gatekeepers, and that your encouragement doesn't just encourage people to skip the series altogether.
I cannot stand the way he's already on this. So, he's already getting on this moral high ground about if you don't agree with me, you're a gatekeeper.
That's the funny part, is that I think I was trying to get to the line, I think it says a little bit later, where he says that, like, the people who don't agree with him aren't real fans, but he also hates gatekeeping.
He already alluded to that.
Right. That's what he says more directly later, is what I mean. So it's like, you hate he hates gatekeepers, yet he's also gatekeeping JoJo fans who disagree with him.
I'm just going to go ahead and say this, and I'm sure people who actually care about the things they like, and because first of all, he's talking about, like, the level of discussion, and that people should want good, open discussion in a series. I don't want good, open discussion of something like Naruto if it creates the Plague of Gripes video. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, look, he brings up series specifically later where the discourse is fucking not only ruined for that series, but ruined for the entire fucking genre because of part skipping. And there's a very specific example he mentions that has these very specific problems. Like, he's saying, oh, good, healthy JoJo discourse. But what if the order that he made creates problems for people who, like, let's say it's popularized and people go through it and they have these issues that they wouldn't have had if they'd gone through part 1. And now you have to deal with all these shitty JoJo takes because of people who skipped parts.
Right,
this is what he wants.
Let's just drop really quickly this facade that I know you fucking actually wouldn't agree with if you were off the record and nobody was going to find out, because nobody who's not trying to look good for other people actually believes this. But let's drop this idea that everyone's opinion is weighted equally and what everyone says matters. And there aren't bad takes. It's just subjective, dude. Like, let's drop that fucking stoner hippie bullshit for a second and actually fucking acknowledge that, like, yes, there are bad takes, okay? They actually exist. And not only do bad takes just exist, but the more popular a bad take gets among the general consensus of the group, the worse discussion around that goes. Because, you know, there's this little thing called fucking confirmation bias, all right? So, Super Eyepatch Wolf's video, you know, he's already said he doesn't stand by it. So, good on Super Eyepatch Wolf, right? I actually like Super Eyepatch Wolf's content, right? I'm not Craftsdwarf hating on the man. I think he makes, like, good videos.
Hey.
I'm just fucking with you, but, like,
I know.
You know, his video fucked Bleach discussion, because people will watch that video and then think it's kind of interesting and read Bleach, and they already have this idea that everything after Soul Society gets worse, and they already have this idea about what Super Eyepatch Wolf said the Soul Society arc's about. So as they're reading it, they're only feeding into this idea that they have for what it's going to be, and they're just going to try to find every little way to confirm.
And even if they didn't feel that way, but maybe like had kind of issue, well, now someone else is putting these, you know, giving the you know, saying these things that sound authoritative and maybe right. So even if they might not have agreed with them, if they had it properly explained to them, because they have like, you know, like because they're on the fence, like it could go either way. But instead they're getting the popular negative take instead of the less popular and spread positive take. That's more correct because it probably has better understanding of the material or the context or something like that.
Right.
And so because negative takes just get spread more, because the people who don't like it will spread it around, and the people who do like it will try and defend it. Where if a positive take, the people who don't like it probably aren't going to watch it. They don't care because they just want to hate on the thing. So the positive take just doesn't get as much boost, and so like you do have these bad takes spreading continuing all this confirmation bias and these being a bad influence on the discourse. And we don't like there's something because like, you know, Phantom Blood is kind of you know, it's kind of talked down, and like it's still good even if it's not as good as the rest of the JoJo Parts. And I don't know how much I'm gonna like it when I reread the series, but like instead of just saying you could skip part 1, why not do a video about how part 1 is actually good? But Geoff doesn't think that, and he doesn't want to defend it. And, like, I don't know. That would have been way more productive and helpful, I think, you know?
Yeah, well, if you go to his... And Geoff knows that negative takes get spread around more, because if you look at his...
He does Sword Online.
If you look at his 6 most popular videos, 4 of them are negative about SAO, right? And so, like, there's that to begin with, but, like, you know, he likes to pretend like, oh, well, any discussion would be good, healthy discussion. That's not true. That is just not true. And you know Geoff doesn't agree with that because he would say the exact opposite thing about, like, political opinions, right? He's the kind of guy who, you know, and I'm not saying this is good, right? Like, I'm legitimately not. But when you have this subjectivist mentality, it's like, oh, you should then also think that, you know, if someone were to go spreading a racist or, you know, fucking homophobic or transphobic or whatever, you know, that's their platform. Well, dude, I mean, you know, it's just
everyone has an opinion. Yeah, exactly.
It's healthy discussion. But, like, that sounds ridiculous, but that's what he does, you know? And we'll see throughout the course of this video, anyone who believes this is spreading it, or, you know, kind of an ethnocentric fucking platform.
Yeah,
and
he's also...
this,
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's saying people who just don't think you should skip parts actually are just like, well, there's somehow gatekeeping when that's literally like, okay, WattheWut has a video on gatekeeping where he talks about like, one, you can't really gatekeep. If someone just wants to fucking watch it, they'll watch it. And 2 is like anyone trying to speak as an authority should be gatekept. They should be held accountable for what they say because they're trying to be an authority. They're trying, and that's what Mother's Basement is doing. And that's why we are here. We are gatekeeping him. We are saying, maybe you shouldn't say some of the dumb things he says in this video because they are incorrect.
Yeah.
So.
And I understand the idea that, oh, well, it's for people who talk from an authority. Every goddamn motherfucker in the anime community talks from an authority because they will go on Twitter or go into YouTube comments or go anywhere and act like what they think is objectively correct. Because everyone fucking rates the shit they watch, so they think they're fucking the critic from Ratatouille coming in, fucking, oh, I'm gonna shut down this anime with my 2 out of 10. When it's like, dude, you just like watch part 5, you have no idea what the fuck's going on. Like the entire first episode's actually just unintelligible.
We don't care that you think it's Garbaggio.
Right. No, so it's like it's just ridiculous, and the fact that he's already like he's painting this picture before he even explains his point. He's
basically saying people disagree with me, and they're probably bad people. Like,
right.
Hello?
He's inherently, instead of trying to do the correct and ethical thing you should do in a persuasive argument, where you bring the actual other side's point and
instead of like this sort of like twisted straw man who's less of a straw man and more of a fucking like horrifying voodoo doll.
Right.
Like that's what he's painting. That's the picture he's painting.
It's not even that he's straw manning, because he hasn't even necessarily brought up points they've made.
Yeah,
he's already saying that people who disagree with him are bad people that don't care.
I mean, I'm not gonna say he hasn't actually seen some really like hostile or talk, because I haven't seen what he's seen, but he's not showing it either. Yeah. Absolutely right. So like, there's probably an image that he's built because yeah, he is a big creator. So he's gonna get real. I've gotten death threats like ages ago, and you know, like
was it for your fairy tale videos?
I think so. It was around then, or maybe, yeah. Like, it's just something that's gonna happen. Like, it's shitty and it's horrible and it shouldn't happen. But on some level, like, it's something you need to expect and be prepared for. Right. And so with Mother's Basement, he's way bigger than me. He's made a career shitting on things like Sword Art Online that people do connect to and have, like, you know, like, so of course he's fucking received death threats and really shitty stuff, and like, but the way he's like sort of like, and maybe he's really received stuff about the JoJo stuff, and that's sort of what he's responding to, but like, he's doing it in a way that's like, again, we disagree with them, you know, are we bad people? I mean, you're being kind of toxic, but no, we're not.
You know, you could call him toxic for the same things, right? I'm calling him a stoner hippie bullshitter, and he calls me a gatekeeping, whatever. The difference is, I'm not just saying, oh, you're a stoner hippie. I'm then explaining my point and saying, hey, this is why what you're thinking is wrong, and I'm not calling my actual, my joke that's there to, you know, be funny, my point is after that, and his point is most of him, like, the idea that he's trying to paint is that everyone who disagrees with him is bad before he's even fully said his point and explained his point, and then trying to explain their points fairly and accurately. He's just inherently calling them all bad, right? Which is something that, like, I can't believe that people still try this tactic and, like, expect people to not lose their shit, when, like, almost any time I feel like I see this shit happen on YouTube or anything, it's like panned by everyone, because people should be smart enough to understand that this is a shitty tactic that is bad and makes you look dumb and like you're afraid of real criticism because you can't actually defend yourself against it.
And I do hope that the dislikes at the start of that he's gotten are reflective of this very hostile start to a video, where it's just he's saying it in a way where it's like, yeah, if you disagree with me, you're probably like. And a lot of people disagree with him.
You are not a real fan if you disagree with him.
And now what's happened is, if someone was more, like, you know, disagreeing with him, but maybe like, okay, sure, I'll hear you out. Well, now they're automatically on defensive because they've been shit on and, you know, ad hominem as a bad person, even though, like, there's we both have legitimate reasons for saying what we're going to say, but he's, like, you know, and he's going to go into counter arguments.
And even more than that, it's like, I just fucking hate this idea that, oh, he's the one to tell people they're not real JoJo's fans, when the people he's calling out probably care way more about JoJo's and the discussion around it than he's not the largest JoJo's fan in the world, right? So I hate this idea of like, oh, well, I'm able to say you're not a real fan because of this, when, like, first of all, you know, you shouldn't tell people what they can and can't like. That's actually just true. But also, it's like, if you're going to call someone not a real fan, at least actually be, like, the world's biggest fan of that thing, right? Like, don't be some fucking guy who, you know, likes JoJo's, and sure, he's made videos on JoJo's and clearly likes it, but for him to just say that people who disagree with me aren't real fans, when a lot of the people disagreeing with him are probably people who care about JoJo's way more than he does, is fun.
And even some of the things he talks about, like good discourse, which You know, Geoff, I don't know what he knows about it. He's not a part of it, right? No, that was a bit mean, but
SAO would be a bad game too, Craftsdwarf. That's you know.
He's definitely not involved in any of the good SAO discourse.
The idea that SAO would make a good game, that's the biggest problem with the series.
It's not realistic.
I went to college for game design. I was a games journalist. I would know.
Also, New Game isn't realistic.
Yeah, New Game's not realistic. It's bad. I'm a games journalist. I tried to get into game design. I would know, Craftsdwarf. I'm part of good, healthy discussion on series. Fucking hate.
Anyway.
Because I'm pretty sure all of us real JoJo fans can agree that a life with some JoJo in it is better than one with no JoJo at all.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Right?
All of us real fans would agree with me. If you're a real fan, you'd agree with me. If you don't agree with me, you're not a real fan.
Yeah, I said he said it directly, so yeah, I just wanted to...
I can't fucking believe it.
And I'd extend that sentiment to all of the anime and game and manga and film series I love. That's why I'm making this video. To make the case that it's totally valid to get into JoJo or any other thing you think might interest you by jumping over the parts of it that are getting in your way, trying out the bit that interests you most, and if you like that enough, going back to the other stuff later. Or not if you don't wanna. And in some cases, for some people, that can even be the best way to get into a thing. The first half of Dragon Ball only made it to air in North America several years after Dragon Ball Z was already an international mega hit. To American and Canadian otaku my age and older, the story of Dragon Ball began with an evil monkey alien intimidating a random hillbilly, bullying a presumably less evil green alien, then flying off to a tiny island to confront an orange guy with a flying cloud, his brother, it turns out, while he was busy introducing his newborn son to a bunch of other people we didn't know. Then they flew off to fight over that baby near the monkey alien's spaceship until the green alien came back to kill both of them and take the kid. It was a confused jumble of a narrative introduction, and if you were anything like 6-year-old me, it had you hooked regardless. DBZ's distinctive art style and intense brand of action needed no further introduction, and the mystery of who all these people were and how they all knew each other only added to my desire to learn more about it. And I didn't need to know much about them to grasp the essential elements of the weird monkey alien family drama that was unfolding before me, or to understand the threat posed by the even more powerful monkey aliens who were coming to do an invasion and get the magic wish balls, which are a thing apparently now. And even though my young mind had no concept of what metal even was, I understood intuitively that the tale of Goku's journey through hell itself to get stronger and fight those big bad monkeys off was metal as fuck. Without knowing any of the backstory, my friends and I enjoyed the heck out of the entire Saiyan and Frieza sagas, and when we finally did get Dragon Ball in Canada, it felt more like an oddly comedic prequel to Z than a truly essential part of it. While I personally enjoyed it immensely, a lot of my DBZ-loving friends never liked or finished the original. And given that they still followed Z for nearly 300 episodes, longer if they gave GT a shot, made fan content around it, and played a lot of the video games, I'd still call them all hardcore Dragon Ball fans. There's a reason Nobody Watched Dragon Ball is a meme in the show's fan community, and there's a reason that Dragon Ball Abridged was able to start in the middle of the story with nobody complaining about it. This chaotic in medias res introduction is just part of what DBZ is within our pop cultural context now.
Okay, can I stop it there? I'm sorry. I was gonna wait. I mean, I hope what keeps these, like, gasps and these noises that... I was trying to wait, dude. I was trying. There were, like... My head is, like, bursting at this point with so many fucking things he said. Okay, first of all, do not call yourself an otaku. You are not Japanese. You are an anime fan. You are fucking cringy and do not call yourself an otaku, okay? You don't speak Japanese. Stop. Okay, that's the first thing. Second of all, how fucking dare you bring up Dragon Ball as a point like it actually means something? already. So let's talk about fucking, you want to talk about JoJo's? Sure, Araki calls them different parts. The original Dragon Ball was one manga called Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama, okay? It was not Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. It was all Dragon Ball. The chapters went together. The volumes went together. Are you going to tell me that Akira Toriyama did not understand his own fucking series? That level of bullshit. Then, Akira Toriyama made Dragon Ball, okay? He started it the same way. Just because a shitty anime came out and called it Z does not mean that that's some kind of reset of
because
story.
of production issues, by the way, and like change in like key staff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you would not call fucking like yes, there is a tonal shift around the time of Dragon Ball Z. I would argue it comes in at the very end of Dragon Ball. Once you get to Demon King Piccolo, that's when the story really starts to change in this kind of direction. Okay, like this idea that you can just start Dragon Ball Z. Did people do it? Yes, but nobody. God, I'm really close to bringing it up. Does he talk about Western media later on?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll try to hide most of it. All I'll say is, watching a show on television as a 6-year-old is how you watch SpongeBob. Okay, anime are inherently different series, and people who like anime...
yeah, that's what I want to say is because like he framed it perfectly. If you skip JoJo Parts, your opinion should be weighted equally with the 6-year-olds because that's what he's arguing here.
Right. It's like, look, I get as a 6-year-old, you're going to like it. 6-year-olds are fucking stupid. I work with children, okay? I had to watch...
No, but if you're 6, you can contribute to the good discourse that Geoff wants.
I had to watch 5 episodes of the goddamn Boss Baby Netflix show today at work, okay? And the fucking 8-year-olds I worked with were eating that shit up. They were laughing at the dumbest things I've ever seen, okay? I would not say you could trust a 6-year-old for fucking anything. You can't trust them to tie their fucking shoes and then not untie them by walking around, okay? You cannot trust, oh, well, I got into it when I was 6. Okay, that doesn't matter. Also, just fucking... you can tell he actually knows nothing about Dragon Ball. I don't care that you watched it when you were 6, by the way. You know nothing about the series. The way you're talking about it, the words you're using, you're like, oh, well, it felt like a comedic prequel. Is Dragon Ball more comedic? Yes. But... First of all.
Look, here's how I can frame how it's important. Go watch a video called, it's like The Strength of Goku or something by Seth the Programmer, where he opens the video saying, Dragon Ball has a fucking long ongoing thematic conflict that starts in Dragon Ball, and you can tell, the Goku's conflict by asking, what is Goku's desire? What does he want? Because you know what Bulma wants, you know what Yamcha wants, but you don't know what Goku wants. There's an arc to it, to Goku's whole character, that you just don't understand if you haven't read the series from beginning to end, or gone through it in some fashion. And so here's what I brought up earlier is how, again, if Geoff wants good discourse, Dragon Ball Z coming to America first, did it, popularize, not only Dragon Ball, but also the, anime and manga and, kickstart this big, consumption boom that we're still feeling the effects of? Yes. That, I think, is good because of, what I, a lot of what I like. I like Dragon Ball. I was also watching it as a kid, not knowing what the fuck is going on and still think it was the coolest shit. But we cannot ignore that Dragon Ball fucking, specifically Dragon Ball Z being dubbed like this and released like this ruined the fucking discourse of shonen, period. Because we are still talking about useless characters. Why? Because you watch Dragon Ball Z. Who the fuck is this pig? Who the fuck is this old man? I don't care. They're useless. Yamcha died. Who gives a shit? The only characters who matter are the characters who do something, right? Because they're the only characters who do anything. So if they're useless, you don't matter. So now we have this shitty, sexist, useless shonen female characters discourse. And power levels. Raditz enters the first episode of Dragon Ball Z talking about power levels. They must be fucking important. No, they aren't. Because the point of power levels is that they aren't important, and that's been that way since Kinnikuman, when the trope was first used as, just this abstract of power levels. So it's you have these, and of course, never mind people just not understanding Dragon Ball and all that dipshittery, but basically, yeah, Dragon Ball Z, yes, people enjoying it, that's good. People having shitty takes and having shitty discourse is a problem we're still having to deal with, not just in Dragon Ball, but in, shonen, period. Right. Battle shonen, specifically, when I say shonen. And that's bad. How do you frame that as a good thing? Again, however you get into things, I think it's fine. But, if you actually want to have understood the work, you're probably going to have to go through it from the beginning at some point. And you're, in the case of something that you experienced as a kid, you're probably going to have to suspend yourself from it from some level to try and, better understand it as an adult, which I still have problems with for some things I watched, 5 years ago. and like, and that's like, you're going. Go ahead.
To go back to it, like the first volume of what we would now consider in the West Dragon Ball Z is Dragon Ball Volume 17 in Japan. That is what Akira Toriyama calls it. It's just Dragon Ball Volume 17. It is not the start of a new thing. And, you know, we'll talk about this again with JoJo's because JoJo's does a similar thing. But with JoJo's, at least there's like a modicum of a difference where there are parts where you get these like almost soft resets on the story, right? Where it completely introduces new characters. That is not what Dragon Ball is treated as when it switches to Z in quotations.
Like, if you want to divide it, like, okay, you brought up the tone shift. Well, what about the time skip, like, right before Piccolo Jr.? Like, wouldn't that be a better place to divide them? Because now you have young Goku and adult Goku? But no, it's not even that. It's just this arbitrary point where, like, the Saiyans come in and we find out Goku's identity. And that's, you know, that's where the art style, it really, like, was, the evolution had sort of hit a point where it more, like, it definitely still art changed, but much slightly. It was much more of a slight change after
and
that.
And the art style change isn't something that is, like, special to Dragon Ball. Art styles change all the fucking time. Like,
in JoJo.
In JoJo's, in Soul Eater, there are massive art. There's like, if you look at the first page, like the first chapter and the last chapter of Soul Eater, the characters are almost unrecognizable as the same fucking thing. Any
long-running manga is going to have, like, if you compare the first chapter and the most recent chapter, One Piece, Hajime no Ippo, Berserk, which has, some of the, like, really high detailed art, still has this major evolution in how the characters are drawn. Like, and it's just, so it's not a really, it's like, it's, where does Dragon Ball become Dragon Ball Z? It doesn't. It's a production thing because the anime, like, you're like, like, imagine if Naruto Shippuden, like, you could say everything like, wow, the first episode of Naruto Shippuden, still, there's all this mystery and it is really weird. But if, that, and there would probably been shitty takes emerged from how, if Naruto Shippuden had been the first exposure America had to Naruto. But, like, it's just a production thing. It's and that's even, that's a better division because it's part 1 and part 2 of Naruto. Like, there's a very clear divide there. Yeah. But it's still one fucking story.
Yeah, Kishimoto considered them, like, different, like, it was part 1 to part 2. Toriyama just kept fucking going with the manga. He doesn't consider there a division there. And then I wanted to mention this because this was the other thing I thought that fucking blew my mind. He's talking about, his children, by the way, friends. And he's like, oh, well, some of them didn't like Dragon Ball. Oh, by the way, though, because, he threw this in, just so y'all know, if you're not privy to why he said the line that he enjoyed Dragon Ball and finished it, is because most people have the, I would say, incorrect opinion that, again, in quotes, because none of this is actually true, that the OG part of Dragon Ball is better than Z, right? Because for some reason, there's this brain-dead take in a majority of shonen discussion that series get worse most of the time as they go, as opposed to the opposite, which is most of the time correct, that they just get better as they go, as more of the themes are explored and it gets deeper and more complex. But that's besides the point. So he throws that in, right? That, oh, well, I liked it, my friends didn't, and they wanted to continue being Z because they liked Z so much, so they watched GT. Like, I get that GT is a sequel to the end of Dragon Ball, but again, that's Dragon Ball. It's not Z, right? Like, GT is the continuation to Dragon Ball. I don't know. I can't stand the way he's talking about.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, like, again, he's talking about, like, the enjoyment and getting into things. And however you get into it and however you experience it, that's up to you. But if you want to be an authority on that thing and talk about it, you should have experienced the whole thing. And that's Geoff's audience, is people, like, you don't watch anime videos if you don't care about the discourse, if you're not literally in the discourse, And if you're going to be even leaving a comment, yeah, you're gonna want to feel like you're contributing something, in which case you're going to want to know what the fuck you're talking about, because, if I read a comment and it turns out, oh, I part 1's bad, but you haven't fucking finished it, then, like, okay, that okay, I don't really care what you think. I don't care what most people think anyway, but that's just me. But it's like, he's the divided. He's trying to condescend people, like, unintentionally. Like, he's just saying, like, if you skip, because, like I said, if you skip JoJo Parts, your opinion should probably be weighted like as if you're closer to 6. If you like honestly, because that's about the level at which you're trying to engage in the media that you're going to discuss.
Yeah, and like I guess I'll probably make this point again. Like, you wouldn't watch the last fight in Gurren Lagann. And only that. And
but then you have to watch Last Fight in Gurren Lagann. Then you have to start from episode 1 to learn the mystery of who Simon is.
Yeah, like,
and who that cape guy who's not there anymore is.
it's so ridiculous to me. I really just okay. We got to keep playing because this video is long and this EWB's already long. But I was trying to hold it in for so long.
And considering how many people love Dragon Ball Z, considering the wild, nigh unprecedented global success it's enjoyed and continues to enjoy, and the sustained cultural impact it's had in North America in particular, it's hard to argue that that was to the series or the fans' detriment.
It's not that hard to argue considering I think both of us just did a pretty good job of that. Also, again, another mistake you've made, Mother's Basement, since you seem to not understand Dragon Ball fundamentally. You're talking about the success that Dragon Ball Z has continued to enjoy. So you showed Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you can correct me, Craftsdwarf, about this. But I'm pretty sure that they're not called Dragon Ball Z GT and Dragon Ball Z Super. They are Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super.
No,
and a large part of the reason that they're treated like that is because of how popular manga is in Japan. And
which is something we're 100% going to talk about later because, like,
okay.
I mean, I'll bring up one example, but...
Well, all I'll say about this is that, like, manga is so popular, and I'm sure that, you know, while I'm not going to argue that Dragon Ball's anime is not insanely popular in Japan, I would be willing to bet that the manga is also insanely popular. Maybe more popular?
Look, manga in general is more popular, and I think you could look at it like, okay, what are the most popular anime? Sazai-san.
Right.
Because it's on television in the mornings. Precure, because it sells toys. Like, Precure's success isn't as big as One Piece's, or Dragon Ball's, or Naruto's. Like,
and so, yeah, like, and okay, you could say that they're continuing to make Dragon Ball stuff because it's popular around the world, but that's just not true, because One Piece will okay, sorry, One Piece isn't a good example, but, like, again, they are not called Dragon Ball Z GT and Dragon Ball Z fucking Super. Yeah. And you think that Shueisha doesn't know that Dragon Ball in the West is called Z, like, that it was Dragon Ball Z is the one that's more popular? So you wouldn't think that if they cared more about making it continuing to be that popular for the West, they wouldn't add the Z in there somewhere? No, because they're making it for people who have read the manga. Because, by the way, Dragon Ball is considered a classic manga in Japan. People rate it very highly. They talk about it a lot because it's fucking
right.
good.
The idea of that being this flawed but influential work that's ultimately just kind of bad, that's purely a Western perspective and a very ignorant one at that.
Right.
But, you know, that's, again, part of the issue with Dragon Ball Z being popularized before as, like, its own thing to an audience that didn't understand what the fuck they were watching because they only had half the story or none of the story when it started, and then continued to have these bad takes based on shitty preconceptions. Like, look, people still think it's the first shonen or whatever, or that and, like, I'm reading Kinnikuman, doing a lot of the same things. And, like, I haven't even gotten to the, like, I'm still not even at the point in its publication when Dragon Ball would have started. So it's like, or maybe I just hit it. It's like, you know, Dragon Ball did a lot of things that were unique or did a couple things that were unique. Not as many as people say, but it's just very, you know, it's got the Evangelion effect, but not as bad where people just think it's like it started all these things because Evangelion was popular with Western anime fans in, like, the 90s and shit because, like, VHS tapes getting traded around. But, like, and that's one thing I want to express. When you're a child watching stuff on TV, you don't have control over what you experience. If you're an adult going onto Crunchyroll or Netflix and watching a show, you can just you have a choice as to you have that control of what and how you experience it. And so you'd think, like, maybe Geoff would make the connection where watching Dragon Ball out of order is the mistake a child would make, where an adult would be like, you know, I'm going to respect this piece of media and start it at episode 1.
You don't... for some reason, he's treating this like it's different than a book, and no rational person would
start Harry Potter with Order of the Phoenix! Well, lots of mystery there.
No rational person, because here's what he seems to be missing. Weekly manga chapters are called chapters. It was the same in Dragon Ball, right? Sure, there are different volumes, but each volume doesn't chapter 1 through 10 of that
What,
volume.
you didn't start Harry Potter as a Sorcerer's Stone with chapter 20?
Yeah, like... Nobody would tell you to start a book at the last chapter, but he's treating it because he saw it on TV as a kid, and anime is something that's on TV, and it's a comic format, so it must be most like comic books. So he's treating it the way that you would treat a Western TV show or a Western comic. And there are fundamental differences with the way that they are created and
distributed
what they mean to their cultures. Yeah.
Right.
And it's, and you know, I actually think that, like, serialized novels are a better example for manga than Western comic books. Something like Great Expectations ran in a magazine, right? It ran in a magazine, whatever, weekly or monthly, just like manga is. And it's an ongoing story that you are supposed to read all in a row. And if you are not caught up, you will buy like the volume versions as that come out. And so it's like, yeah, it's just ridiculous. And he completely misunderstands not only why Dragon Ball has continued to get sequels and what makes Dragon Ball popular, because he's looking at it through this Western lens only.
Which I think is another huge problem with, like, just Western anime and manga fans in general, is that they just refuse to recognize that the works they discuss are from a different culture and produced and really, like, you know, people will say, oh, medium is meaning, and it's like, well, a lot of the reasons things are the way they are is because of the fact that these Dragon Ball came out in the form of serialized chapters once a week, and it was an adapted of serialized episodes that came out once a week, but based on like the reason that there's filler is because we've got this manga coming out, and so we have to make this anime original content because we can't overtake the manga. Like, right. That there's something going there. That's why it's produced the way it is. Like, where Western stuff doesn't really have that same issue because, like, adaptations are very rare or they're original. Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, yeah, it takes from comic books, but it's basically original stories, which is what comic books are too, where they take these characters and they basically make original stories with those characters. So it's like, it's just fundamentally different in how it's produced and released and created even. And, and so, like, you can't just compare them. But anyway, he does make a comparison later, but we'll get to that.
Funimation banked on the idea that young Americans would enjoy the series more if it just jumped right into the action, and they were clearly right. And that wasn't just some happy accident. The whole reason that Dragon Ball has 2 big status quo altering time jumps built into it, and the reason that it's broken up between those jumps into distinct sagas that focus on self-contained villains, is to allow new readers and viewers to pick the series up in the middle without feeling totally lost. Out of necessity, it was designed to be discovered out of sequence. So is almost every TV show that's not a streaming original. Before the existence of streaming platforms, that was just how you found new shows to watch. You'd surf around until you saw something that could hold your attention, enjoy the self-contained elements of that episode's storyline, and then, if you liked it, you'd keep following the series, trying to piece together whatever you missed until a rerun or marathon came along to help you get caught up.
Okay, again, he is fundamentally misunderstanding Dragon Ball, which I can't believe I'm having to explain Dragon Ball in a JoJo's video, but I don't know what else I'm surprised with. Okay, there's more than just 2 time-altering time skips. The first one, again, happens in original Dragon Ball. And everything is not, the time skips do not happen so new readers can come in. They did not tell him, hey, you should do these time skips so new readers can come in. Toriyama's editors told him not to do time skips. But he did it.
Oh, no, Torishima, or no, I don't know which of his editors it was, but he was literally sat at the Jump office the morning that issue came out where, Goku, got older and stuff, waiting for angry calls, and they didn't come. Because he was fucking terrified that people would just hate Dragon Ball now that, this fundamental change to this beloved main character happened. Right. But, so it's like, it was a risk. It
wasn't something that was done because, we need to be able to allow people to get into it. You're looking at it through such a fucking ethnocentric mindset because you can't actually engage with things in the place they're from because you're stupid. But, okay, so there are reasons for every time skip in Dragon Ball. Let's just look at the ones in Z. Let's just look at the ones going in. So going from, because they are in service at the theme of the story, at the point of the story. So going from Dragon Ball to Z, the time skip. The reason for it.
Well, that's not even. No, you mean going. Or wait, which time skip?
Going from Demon King Piccolo to the Saiyan Saga. Okay.
Well, first it was Piccolo Jr. Then there's another little time skip between Piccolo Jr.
From the end of Demon King Piccolo to the start of the Saiyan Saga, which is only like a 2-year time skip because the larger time skip had already taken place. The reason for that time skip is because Gohan needs to be introduced to the story. Right? The entire point of that time skip is to create Gohan because at this point, the point of Dragon Ball, which is again Goku trying to be stronger and grow stronger, and now it's turning into he's looking for a successor as well for his strength. So Gohan's introduced because he's supposed to be someone that Goku thinks is his successor for most of the story. So then it time skips again to what's now called like Team Gohan. And the reason for that is because now Gohan's supposed to be at an age where Goku could hand off the successorship to him. So Gohan is supposed to be at the age that Goku was when Goku beat Piccolo, right? Because the idea is supposed to be, I beat Piccolo and I saved the Earth when I was your age, so now you beat Cell and you take over the Earth. Again, it's in service of the themes of the story, not to get new readers in. And then the last one is to show specifically that in the time since the Cell saga, so going from Cell to Buu, the point is that that Gohan has gotten lazy and isn't training because Gohan doesn't want to fight and is not the correct successor for Goku. So the point there is that time skipped, Gohan got older and lost all the training he had done into the series previously. There are thematic reasons for the time skip. It is not to introduce new readers. Most people in Jump, sure, you could. There are people who read Jump, but most people who buy Jump buy it every week and read it every week. And
he talks about that.
Okay.
So, but no, I get, yeah.
Shonen Jump's entire business model is built around the idea that readers will buy the magazine to keep up to date with a series they already like from TV or tankobons, and then check out the other stories printed alongside it because, hey, they already own the whole thing and they may as well get their money's worth. That's why they're always cycling in new series, but it's also why every successful long-running Shonen Jump story is broken up into discrete arcs and sagas with self-contained plot lines and unique supporting casts. These series need new readers to stay competitive, and these arcs and their new characters give those readers a chance to enjoy a more digestible part of the story in the hopes that they'll eventually be hooked enough to go back and binge the rest or just keep going from there because, again, they're already buying the magazine for One Piece or Haikyuu or whatever. They may as well.
This video is fucking disgusting. Like, this is actually just terrible. Okay.
No, he just does. He just does not understand that what we said earlier, that Japan primarily reads first. Like, look, you'll notice that all these anime get manga, or no, the other way around. All these anime adapted from manga, like, the manga was already successful or popular before it happened.
Right.
You'll notice that, right? Mitama Security isn't getting an anime adaptation because it did its run. It wasn't super well liked. Like, volumes didn't sell a lot, so they axed it. Time Paradox Ghost Rider, axed. Bone Collection, axed. These series that get an anime are already vetted by manga readers, and they are more popular as manga than they are as anime. Like, right. There are exceptions, like K-On!, but these are not the rule. Like, the anime adaptation, and sometimes the anime ends up being an ad for the manga. Kimetsu no Yaiba is a great example, because, like, the anime was well received, and that made people, that and the fact that the manga was in the last arc. Kimetsu no Yaiba is the fastest selling manga. It is not the most selling manga, but it has sold the most volumes in a single year. It did that like months ago. Broke One Piece's record, and it held the top 18 spots each of its in the Oricon weekly sale. Like, it's selling absurd numbers.
That's what I was gonna say is when Kimetsu came out and the anime started to get popular, right? People were buying all the volumes. They were not just
from volume 1.
If what Geoff was saying was true, all right, let's assume his premise is true, which is not. People would just be buying Jump, and they would just start reading it weekly, right? Who cares that they skipped this big chunk of the story? That doesn't matter. They'll see it eventually. But that's not what happens. Because if people get introduced to it, in Japan, where these things are, where they're made and who they're made for, there is an understanding that you read things all the way through. Is that true with every series? No. Something like Kochikame, sure, you would just read the Kochikame chapters, right? And yeah, you could probably make an argument that that's why Kochikame was able to go for as long as it did and have 200 volumes of manga. However, right, there's another thing he says that's just wrong, where he's like, that's why all these shonen series have these arcs, is so that people can come in with all these different supporting characters. I'm sorry, but Bleach has a majority of the supporting cast, the same supporting cast, the entire time. Right?
Yeah.
Dragon Ball has literally, if we look at Dragon Ball, the manga, okay? Let's look at from the end of the Demon King Piccolo arc to the end of the manga, the supporting cast, who gets added? Trunks for one arc, so that's only one character. Vegeta, who was a villain in a previous arc, that's 2 characters, right? But 2 and then one who's the whole time, and one is for one
Gohan
arc.
is born at the start of Z.
Gohan is
Goten
born.
and Trunks and younger Trunks are born for Boo. Videl, Mr.
Right.
Satan. Like, yeah, that's a pretty small handful considering we're talking about hundreds of chapters across 3 to 4 major 5 if you split up Saiyan Saga into 2 arcs.
Right.
But Saiyan, Namek, Cell, Boo, like, not a lot of characters getting added.
Yeah,
all things
Krillin's
considered.
there from the beginning, right? Piccolo's
Early
there
on,
from
yeah.
when he was defeated and became a good guy, just like Vegeta.
Tien
Right?
was, Yamcha, like a lot of these characters were antagonists who became supporting characters
Which
early
is kind
on.
of, again, part of what Dragon Ball's trying to do. You know, you look at Hunter x Hunter, and that one's different. There are a lot of new supporting characters every time, right? You look at One Piece, there are a lot of new supporting characters every time. But that's not all shonen series. Like, arcs...
No, and like a lot of why the series are done are because they're in a magazine and they're trying to get new readers, but like there'll be different techniques for that, and obviously, yeah, like it's just bad business if someone is only reading the series chapter to chapter and they're not going back and buying the volumes. That is bad business, because that is how Jump will literally, that's a metric, not the only metric, but a metric for determining how Jump will like keep a series or not, is if it sells a lot of volumes. Chainsaw Man sold a lot of volumes. It's still in Jump. Meantime Security didn't. It's not in Jump anymore. Like, it's
Right.
and again, it's not a hard rule, but because, there's other factors to consider, but it is something to consider. And again, that people buying volumes means they want the whole thing. Just easily accessible, because obviously a giant Jump volume isn't accessible. And the other thing is, like, again, you're talking about a magazine that has literally been around for decades. Like, Ring Kakuro is so popular, this was in like the 80s, by the way, if not like the 70s, that Jump was had numbers, like subscription numbers around like 3 million, which is about what it had, like not even what it has today.
Right.
And this is like one series that's absurdly popular versus, One Piece, and like just over this last year, like Haikyuu did end, Hero Academia, like all these really popular series, but Jump is still not as popular as as Shonen Jump was because of just Ring Kakuro. So yeah, but because of that, if you look over this old history, you have like families who've been reading Jump their entire lives.
Yeah.
And you can't just so it's not just that like, oh, you just keep up with series. No, some of these people, yeah, they're maybe not reading everything, but like they're keeping up with these series and they're want to buy the volumes for, like you see in anime all the time, they trade around manga volumes, like, oh, yeah, like, cause the volumes are where you get the series, it's like, it's a culture where reading is just the norm compared to anime. Like, unlike where, again, if you look at my anime list, I actually checked the most popular manga, I think is like, it would be in the top like 300 most popular anime. It's like,
Right.
It's not, or maybe I checked something else. But yeah, there's a huge difference between the most popular anime and the most popular, the watchers of the most popular anime. And yeah, it is called my anime list, and maybe that's part of it. But maybe just people just don't, not as many people read manga, in the Western sphere.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, it is true that, like, I'm looking at it right now. So the most popular manga on Mao with the most number of users, okay, would be, fuck, this is taking a while. Sorry, it's way bigger than the number you just said. That's why it's taking me so long to get to it. Oh my god, I'm still not fucking there. Holy shit, this is taking
You keep
forever.
going. I want to bring up something Nun said,
Okay.
where it's like, yeah, shonen aren't the only series that are stories that are divided into arcs. Fucking, my brother and mom really liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV series, and every season had its own antagonist, but it also had ongoing and continuing narrative. Like we owned the whole thing, so that if they wanted to watch it, they could watch from season 1, which they didn't like as much, so they usually didn't but they'd seen it,
So the most popular manga on Mao by users, and this is not an objective measure by any means.
It's
but
I do think it's a good measurement of
It
the
is a
people, the people that will be watching this video, the people
Right.
in the anime discussion sphere who are interested enough to look at up analysis videos, to like catalog what they watch on my anime list or read.
Right.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, it is. Okay, so 321,000 members for Attack on Titan. Okay? That would put it in between the 354th and 355th most popular anime on Mal by users.
So in other words, there are literally dozens of anime on Mal, several hundred. Yeah, hundreds that are more popular than the most read manga on my anime list.
It's Attack on Titan, which the reason it has that many is because it took Attack on Titan years to get a season 2.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and of course, also, like, even then, like, what's happening, people are fucking freaking out over what's been happening in the manga over the last couple of years, and that hasn't been animated, some of it, I'm sure. So it's like, it's an anime adaptation that, like, made people want more, and then the anime didn't happen, and then even now the anime is happening, it's still not happening at this, like, there's still, like, the manga's only continue to get, like, crazier and more interesting for people who are super into it, so of course they're gonna go read the manga. And also, like, it came out in the the 2010s, where, again, like we were talking about earlier about how, like, when One Piece was translated, it was a very different, like, sphere for manga in the West. So, which is why it has, like, it was just translated different and released a little differently than where nowadays you can go and I can probably find, like, fucking interviews with Monster Girls or Chihaya, which I would never have been able to dream about. Like, I would never have been able to dream about finding Chihaya like 10 years ago when it actually aired, you know, or when I got into it in, like, 2013, not in a fucking Barnes and Noble, and that's very comparably recent, you know, where, again, this era of, like, Dragon Ball where he's talking about. So it's like, it's not the fucking same. You cannot just assume things work exactly the same in Japan as they do in America or Canada or where, you know, or, you know.
I think that is, again, like, my biggest problem with this, not only this take, and I don't think Jeff's going to do it in this video, but when we talk about reception and the way people talk about it, I definitely will bring it up. But people look at things in Japan through their Western lens and the way we get things. Like, he's talking about, oh, well, streaming services like Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll isn't used in Japan, right?
No.
Another way
they can just, like, watch things on television.
Right. And
yeah.
There's a reason that a lot of these popular shows are, like, they are late night anime in Japan. Even for Shonen Jump stuff, right? They come out
some of it for sure, and some of it's in, like, the morning or the morning.
And but that is appealing to kids who probably can't read yet. And then the later night stuff, and most anime that are manga adaptations, so not even just Inside Shonen Jump, are late night anime. And the reason for that is because they are appealing to people who have already read it as, like, in a like, they're, like, kind of an addition, right? It's
like I said earlier, like, the anime the anime that are adapted for not even just manga, light novels and stuff, they were already successful to some degree before. And yeah, it can really kickstart their popularity because, you know, it's going to be this more exposure and stuff, but it's still already something that people enjoyed enough that was successful enough to not get canceled. Right. Which, especially in Shonen Jump, which is probably one of the most competitive manga magazines, like, they chop, like, a dozen series, if not more, a year. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. And then to go back to a point you were talking about, like, you know, the way that, like, you see Shonen Jump and manga magazines treated in, like, anime and manga. Whenever you see in, like, a high school like anime or something, they're reading Jump or a manga magazine, they read the entire thing. They don't just open it, read their, like, the entire point around it a lot of times is that you see them with the magazine flipping through it all. You can look at Gintama. Gintoki buys Jump, reads it all, and talks about all the series in it. You know what I mean? Like, that is
and they want people to do that because that's how the series that start fresh in the magazine, like, that's how they find out what works and what doesn't, because people are reading those series. They're, you know, submitting this questionnaire, the survey, and deciding if they like these new series or not. And then based on that reaction, that helps this. That's another, one of the major factors alongside, like, volume sales and even just editor, you know, like, they talk about it in a room and they're, you know, they're going to argue about it based on, like, what they know and how they feel, and the head editor of the manga, you know. So it's like, there's a process to it, and like, yeah, you're going to read those series because they're new in Jump and you're curious about the new thing. But, like, and again, like, you're not, I don't know as Westerners, we got into Jump, like, you know, because I was interested. That's what got me into watching anime and reading manga online, was One Piece. But we'll talk about how I got into One Piece a little later. But
right, well, it's so dumb, and there's so much, like, context that I don't believe, actually, for a second, that he doesn't know most of the shit we're saying, but he's leaving it out because he's trying to push this narrative.
Yes.
And it's just stupid, and It's so easily, like, I don't know why he acts like this. It feels like he expects, he expects people to not be able to call him out on his bullshit. Because he's trying to call everyone who would call him out on some of just the wrong things he's saying as gatekeepers or not true fans. When, like, we haven't even started really talking about JoJo's yet.
No.
We're just talking about his basic premise for this stuff, and he's already just
Which is fundamentally
so
wrong. Yes.
Yeah.
JoJo takes especially great advantage of these principles. The entire series is broken up into short, digestible story arcs whose high concepts and underlying themes can be explored in at most a dozen or so chapters, with closure coming in the form of a satisfying minor villain smackdown at the end of each one. And these villain arcs build up to conclusive finales in the space of just a few years, giving way each time to an effective series reboot with an entirely new cast, central antagonist, and storyline to follow for new readers to jump on the JoJo hype train. Honestly, it strikes me as pretty asinine that hardcore fans of JoJo in particular are so insistent that people follow the one proper orthodox reading order when Araki has gone out of his way to create so many different accessible jumping on points for new fans.
Go off.
Okay, first of all, it's not that hard to fact check the things you say. You say, oh, well, they're supposed to go on for a couple years. So let's look. Okay, so I'm trying to pull it up right now. Part 7 went on for 7 years. I would not call that just a couple years, right? Yeah. Most parts are over 10. The only 2 parts that are not over 10 volumes
Are 1 and 2, right?
1 and 2. I would not call 152 chapters just a dozen chapters. I would not call 174 chapters just a dozen chapters. I would not call 155 chapters a couple dozen chapters. I would not call 158 chapters a couple dozen chapters.
Well, and even that, because he's saying, like, oh, they could just, bring up these themes and explore them in a little while. No. The series has core themes that it has continued to explore and is still continuing. It started to explore and has continued to explore in every single part. Which, actually, I own a book that Araki published called...
This video is just pissing me off because, like, you can just, like, he's like, oh, a couple dozen chapters. And maybe someone will be like, is JoJo's only a couple? And look at part 1, and it's 44 chapters. And you go to part 2, and it's 69 chapters. And anytime you look deeper, it's just verifiably proven that what he's saying is bullshit. You can just go to Mal and do it in a couple seconds.
Right. So anyway, I own his book, Manga Theory and Practice, and he literally spells out the core theme of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and you can recognize it in every part. If you if you don't notice it yourself, well, it's there. Like, he didn't, if he wanted to just explore it in one part, he would have done it and then stopped. But he continued on with it because, like, that's legacy is one of the big points in JoJo. Like, the fact that all the JoJos are related. There's a reason for that. Like, if he wanted to make these disconnected stories, which he's done, because if you look at Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan, which is an episodic thing that focusing around this character from part 4, where he just ends up in or hears about all these weird horror scenarios that, some of it's been adapted, some of it, from the originally published chapters. Like, that's episodic, but, like, even something like that is still, like, trying to tell, like, a kind of narrative through it. But it's especially the case in JoJo, which, so he's assuming that, Araki wouldn't have done this if he didn't want people to just part skip.
Right, and I do want to...
So
okay.
I posted an image that will be in the video where Araki says, this is Araki, or for those who have yet to read JoJo, which part would Araki-sensei recommend they read from? And Araki says, which part would I recommend? Well, there are certain aspects of JoTaro that you wouldn't understand if you've never read a part involving Dio. So if you think about it that way, the ideal method to read would be from the very beginning. And the only exception, he says, is Part 7, which he made to be... Part 7 was published as Steel Ball Run, as an original manga by Araki. Like, JoJo ended with Part 6, and started with with Steel Ball Run, which turned out to be a part of JoJo. Like, that wasn't from the beginning.
But he didn't announce that it was JoJo's at the beginning.
until he moved out of Shonen Jump to a different magazine, right? So and that's where my personal read order the read order for JoJo comes in, because I dropped part 1 like twice, and then I just read part 7, and then I liked it, and then I was into it, and then I was able to go back to the beginning and read. So my entry to JoJo was not in order. And if, and maybe, I wouldn't have enjoyed it otherwise. But, like, if I were to read JoJo for the first time now, I just force through and read part 1, and then read part 2 and just go through it like that, because, I'm an adult now, and that's just how I prefer to read, because I like to see the evolution of the art and the writing, like Kinnikuman. Yeah, I could skip to, I could skip the Ultimate Muscle part and just read the continuation of Kinnikuman, but I don't want to, because I want to see how the writer and author duo evolved over the course of their story, because they didn't publish the continuation of Kinnikuman until after they finished Ultimate Muscle. So it's like, and that's just, how I personally feel about things. But Araki is literally saying, like, so, you know what? I guess Araki isn't a true JoJo fan because he doesn't think you should skip parts.
It's ridiculous. So I want to bring up some more evidence to kind of prove what we're talking about. So if you go to part 5, right, which I'm pretty sure he already said was like the most self-contained story. Let's look at the first volume cover of part 5. Wow. Huh.
Hey, look. I see 2 other JoJos there, and their stands. Yeah, no, that's one thing I want to bring up, because, like, if Araki wanted you to, you could just read part 2, well, you have to buy volume 6 of JoJo, which has Jonathan and Dio dying and for half and they're fighting and for half the volume, and then Joseph comes in, and it's the grandson of Jonathan, who you're already supposed to know. Right, when you start part 5 and you're like, oh, Giorno's the son of Dio? You're supposed to know that Dio's an evil piece of shit, and maybe it's kind of weird that he has a son, and like, who knows that he died in Egypt, and his mother had a picture of him. Like, that's bizarre for knowing Dio's character from part 1 and 2. Like, but that has no impact if you just start with part 5.
Yeah, and there's even more there. Like, it's volume 47. There is a big number right there that says 47. Araki did not create these to be jumping in points, and it's not even that he's just assuming authorial intent, right? Because, like, okay, if you wanted to argue death of the author, I would disagree with that, but that would be different than what he's doing. He's not, like, here's what's so important about the way he's framing this and why he's wrong. Because it's not necessarily that, because if you wanted to argue death of the author at that point, then we get into this philosophical discussion about the point of the author in media. Mm-hmm. He is arguing from the lens of authorial intent. Which is why it's so easy to prove him wrong in both Dragon Ball's case and this. Because we can tell with Dragon Ball, because the title didn't change, the volumes didn't reset, that's not the authorial intent. And we have Araki literally saying you would not understand things if you did not read from the beginning. So I would say to read from the beginning, except for part 7. And, if you wanted to say, like, again, if the video is just, you can start from part 7 because, it's a reset and that's what Araki said, I would disagree personally. I think that there are things in part 7 that are really interesting. I personally, you should think, I think you should start, if you don't like part 1 and you can't get into it, then okay, do whatever the fuck you want. Watch parts 5, I don't care. Like, cause maybe that'll finally get you into it and make you want to read the other parts. But, he brings that up later, kind of, and, but it's like, again, if you want to respect the work, as we've shown, the author and the magazine intended it to be read and experienced. You start from the beginning because that's what they want you to do. Right. That's literally the point is that you're supposed to be starting from these early spots because you're supposed to understand the story in its entirety. Right. Another way, because you're talking about the themes of lineage, and this is important because now we're talking about they all have. I think he was trying to imply that they have individual themes when that's just...
Which they do, but, like, they're also built around... Because, and you'll see that, like, again, he said, it's divided, like, all Dragon Ball is divided in arcs so that new stories can be run. And yeah, those individual arcs, like, with One Piece, they'll have individual themes that are explored in that arc that maybe you can associate with other arcs, but maybe aren't being explored in the same way. But there's still core themes. Like, and that's the thing. JoJo is structured in the same way. It just does something. Yeah, it uses has a different main character, and there's really big time skips, and but those there's still other. There's always like a thread. Like, who's in part 2? Speedwagon. Who's in part 3? Joseph. Who's in part 4? Jotaro. Who's in part 5? Koichi. Like, who's in
Right.
part 6, Jotaro again. Like, there's always a connecting thread from the previous part, or from a previous part to because like it is a continuing story.
Again, like, to continue, like, if JoJo's is about, like, this celebration of humanity and, like, you know, humanity as a whole. And what is a major thing that a lot of series, especially, and here's, again, something to remember, especially in Japan, a lot of humanity discussion is about lineage and passing on and, like,
Right, which you have to consider, like, especially with Shinzo Abe stepping, you know, health concern. Like, he was really pushing, you know, people having kids. And so,
Right.
like, when the antagonist of part 2, Cars, achieves his perfect form and can't have children, and it ends with Joseph beating him, getting together with Suzy Q, and banging, and having children, like, that go into part 3, like, that same volume, like, there's a purpose there. There's something,
Right.
you know, like, because that's what Araki is doing. You know, and like yeah, that's, you know, the lineage ties into the humanity theme, which is why, like, a lot of these antagonists aren't, you know, like, Dio rejects his humanity, Cars is above humanity, like, that's why they're the bad guys. What do you know?
Right. And it yeah, and so the idea of the parts is actually in service of that theme, just like Dragon Ball.
That he's saying could be fully explored in a dozen volumes or a dozen chapters and just moved on to the next theme, when it's like, maybe you don't fully grasp JoJo there, Geoff. Just saying, maybe.
All right, keep playing. We gotta, yeah.
Out of a cast of dozens, only 7 characters play significant roles in more than one part, and 3 of those are split between Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. The long-term continuity of JoJo only really becomes essential to plot comprehension in Part 6, and arguably the very end of Part 3. In the rest, it's mainly lore, fan service, and non-essential character development. And I do think understanding all of that can enrich your experience of each individual part, but it's silly to argue that continuity is the core of what makes JoJo good. If it was, Araki never could have gotten away with rebooting the series in a parallel universe, and also, he probably wouldn't have wanted to do it in the first place.
So I literally just said that Araki, like, so I've heard that apparently Jump didn't want him publishing JoJo anymore, but I don't think that's necessarily true, considering it was Steel Ball Run was JoJo, but like,
But it wasn't JoJo at first, right?
Right,
Yeah, it was
which is
something
important.
else.
So
And it
he's
just kinda
not
had names that were familiar.
right.
But,
So
like,
he didn't.
Stan
He
wasn't
did.
even in
Yeah.
it for a long time. Yeah.
Right, and that's So it's like, it's not like, oh, he wouldn't have rebooted if he but he did. Like it wasn't JoJo. It wasn't billed as JoJo. It wasn't billed as being this continuation of his story at first. So like it's not that's not a good point. And also, like, oh, it's not non-essential character development. Like, he's saying, like, oh, you know, Josuke having this big moment with Joseph, like this returning character you're supposed to already have context in. That's not non-essential character development.
I mean,
Because
the biggest one for me is, okay, well, there's a bunch, right? There's a lot of things that aren't just lore, little lore things, right? Okay, let's talk about a couple scattered things that, you know, maybe they aren't that important. Let's talk about them. All right, so first of all, in part 3, the whole reason they are going on the quest is because it is the guy who is the villain from part 1, right? And killed Joseph's grandfather, right?
Right.
Like, that's, like, oh, not important. Not important to know who the villain is when the entire point is supposed to be that you know who he is. And that you know, not just a little thing, by the way, kind of a major point that makes them know it's Dio is that he had the star tattoo. You wouldn't know what that means if you hadn't seen him take Jonathan's body. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's just a small one. Well, you know, not that important. What about in part 4, early on, when we see that a large part of the reason they're there is for the same thing that they found in part 3, and then also they are trying to, like, what about the moment where Jotaro has fucking PTSD from his fight with Dio? Not that important. Doesn't matter.
no,
You know? Never mind the fact that a large part of his reason for doing everything he's doing is because he doesn't want another Dio. He doesn't want to deal with that again, and he doesn't want to make anyone else deal with what he dealt with. Not important.
nope.
It's just... he's like, I honestly feel like I can't believe that he actually believes the shit he's saying. He's just making shit up.
I could believe that he's talked himself into believing it.
Okay, that's fair. It feels like there's this level of like he's saying these things and just like twisting a narrative to fit something while just blatantly lying and leaving information out. It's insane.
Like I've said, this is because like here's an example that he's done before in his Megalobox video. He's like, oh, you know, Ashita Joe hasn't been relevant outside of video games since it came out.
Right, it's just shit that's not
right.
true.
Let's not pretend that, you know, the manga hasn't been like re-released and re-released, and the anime isn't rerun on television, and it's not like, look, here's we finished Ashita Joe, and in like that 4-week period of like between the third episode and the fourth episode on the Nen show of the podcast I WattheWut do and the first episode of Kinnikuman, there were 2 references in Komi-san, an ongoing manga, and Heal and Good Precure, an ongoing anime. Both, you know, especially the Precure one was interesting because that's you know, for children, and so like, you know, obviously they probably wouldn't catch the reference, but you know, the adults watching would.
Right.
And like, but most of the people like making and recognizing these references weren't around when Ashita Joe started. So it's absurd to say that it hasn't been relevant outside of video games because, you know, again, he's approaching it from this Western perspective. If there aren't new iterations or sequels or reboots or remakes, it's not relevant anymore. Like, you know, because he's the culture he's familiar with is one where, again, you know, what's the Red Letter Media line? You know, new product comes out, you know, consume, move on, or whatever.
Let me grab it. It's don't ask questions, just consume product. That's what
yes,
it is.
right, exactly. Like that's what
product.
Mother's Basement is used to, of just moving on and not caring when Japan will stick around with a lot of these things. And yeah, JoJo's been ongoing since the 80s. Hajime no Ippo's been going since the 80s. Detective Conan's been going since the 90s. One Piece has been going since the 90s. Like, continually. And that's something that you don't really get in the West in the same way. Like, yeah, you could say, oh, comic books. Well, yeah, but those are fucking clusterfuck narratives that reboot themselves every 5 years. So it's
and anything
that's
that
not really the
does
same.
go that long, the narrative in the West is always, oh, it jumped the shark at a point. Because a lot of times, you know, okay, here's another point to make, right? Something like The Simpsons, been going on forever.
And everyone fucking hates it, yeah.
It changes writing teams constantly. Has Conan changed its writer? Has One Piece changed its writer? Did Dragon Ball's writer change? Did JoJo's writer ever change?
Nope. They changed assistants and editors, but also the writer, they evolved over time because, like, their writing and art changed as they did, as people, because that's a long fucking time.
Right. It is supposed to be a single continuous series. And yes, they're long, but they're supposed to be long. It's supposed to take a long time to get through the story because the story's going to have a lot of ideas in them.
And because of that, like One Piece is my favorite story of all time, and part of that reason is because its scale, it's epic, as an epic, and I use that like you know, I think we've almost come full circle where we can say that word and it's not that cringe anymore because like it's not, no one's using it anyway.
Right.
Like,
now we're using it as the actual term of a,
because it is an epic, a world-spanning epic, and that's matched by its length. Like, it would not be as good as it was if it. In fact, a lot of people are saying it's kind of rushed right now and needs to be longer. You know, but Oda also wants to finish it in his lifetime, so it's like I understand, but like, and I'm glad for it's, you know, and also I want to point out that if you saw Mother's Basement tweets, he's literally reading One Piece right now. Like, because if you see in his name, he has like it was like 540 something out of 980 something, and a little pirate flag because he's reading One Piece right now. So it's like maybe he would get it. You know, he should, like, maybe the scale is good, and like and because you're supposed to read, he's reading One Piece from the beginning. What do you fucking know? Maybe that's what you're supposed to do for these long fucking stories.
But JoJo's is different. It's
yeah,
just
somehow.
That's the kind of thing writers do when they feel like continuity is bogging their stories down. Now, of course, in the age of the internet, we no longer need to discover and experience stories in such an archaic, inconvenient fashion.
Oh!
Nor do we need to worry about commercial breaks, at least in theory. In practice, though, I'm about to hit you with one.
Do you want to say something?
You, Geoff. Holy shit. Oh my god. Fuck you. That was one of the worst. I actually am not. That is one of the worst sentences I maybe have ever fucking heard on an EWB. Holy shit. I'm actually fucking malding. He just called like the entire magazine industry and like serialized way to tell a story archaic and that we don't need it anymore. Fuck you. There's a reason that people, myself included, love reading shit weekly. Right? It's not done because, they could just... There's a few reasons manga's done weekly. One is, you could not draw 200 volumes of a manga and release it all at once, right?
No,
that's the fucking
just,
first
it's
thing.
infeasible, right?
It's ludicrous, right? Something like Naruto takes, or like One Piece. Oda's pretty much... I'd be willing to bet Oda works on One Piece multiple hours a day, every day, since the 90s, right?
Yeah.
He's probably taken a couple days off, but...
Yeah, he took a vacation during the time skip. Like, so in other words, in order to get a vacation as a manga author, you basically have to, like, make the most popular manga in the world, and then, like, he hit a really good, like, point after, like, 15 years, and then you can get, like, an actual vacation of, like, 4 weeks or so,
Right.
maybe. And, like, look, half of that is probably going to be spent working on the time skip and the designs and, like, the rest of the story. So,
Yeah.
Like, wow, 2-week vacation after. That's a horrible fucking, like, and, but anyway, yeah, that's a little off
Like,
topic.
these people are artists who are dedicating their lives to what they are doing. They are spending thousands of hours creating these stories. And to do that profitably, you have to release bits of it as it comes out. You could not make like, Oda could not have made One Piece if he was working a full-time job drawing One Piece in his spare time. It literally would never have made it past, like, Alabasta or some shit, right?
Yeah.
Just the amount of time it would have taken. So that's one thing.
Well, like,
Second
keep
of
in mind that, like, let's look at comics that are actually produced without these kind of big industries. Like webcomics. They're produced 1 page at a time, maybe 3 pages a week. Manga authors have to do, like, 15 or 16 pages if they're, like, a gag manga author, or 19 to 20 pages a week if they're, they do other manga. Absurd amount of time. Absurd amount of, like, that's a absurd amount of work. And if you watch Bakuman or anything like that, you've seen the absurd amount of work it is.
Yeah. And so that's already ridiculous. But then, like, how can you say that it's an archaic and outdated form when there are, like, especially on YouTube, there is a fucking massive community of people who read a lot of these manga weekly, talk about it weekly, and like to talk about where they think it's going.
Manga is bigger now than it, like, has ever been. Like, I said earlier that, Shonen Jump doesn't have the subscription base that it did in with Ringin Hakuro. Yeah, but there's also way more competition. And, like, you have these, like, 30 anime adaptations 30 anime be airing, with like a bunch of those being adapted from manga series, or light, and more for light novels or games or something that are original. And, like, because of the international success, and, like, you can go into Barnes and Noble and find more manga selection than I remember when I got into anime, and I, like, a few years into it, I went to Barnes and Noble for the first time in ages. And I was, like, shocked to see, like, Aku no Hana. Like, what? Why would that's just something I never would have imagined being on a bookshelf in America. Like, light novels are selling well enough that they keep publishing more of them. Like, the market is so different now. And, like, so why are you saying it's an archaic when we're really just getting closer to what Japan's been doing for decades?
And on top of that, right, not even just is already that idea fucking terrible, but, like, people like reading weekly, and a lot of these stories are made to be read weekly. They're meant to be experienced like that. Yeah,
that's why they end off on these, like, little cliffhangers or reveals or something that you hit you, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta talk to all my friends about it. I gotta at Vindy 9 times about Chainsaw Man.
And that idea is also what causes people, it's kind of the same idea that causes people to want to binge things. It's why people can't change the episode when they're watching something that came out weekly, because they can just skip that week of waiting, right? But a lot of people love that week of waiting. There's a reason, by the way, and I think Netflix actually actively tries to hurt this because they want people binging and watching Netflix for as long as possible, but there's a reason. And, I'm not someone who's always going to give credit to Disney, especially not for how they handle Star Wars. But I fucking love that when Disney Plus were doing The Mandalorian, they had an episode come out a week. Because what did that do for their series? It got people to watch the series, see Baby Yoda, and talk to each other. And so then when episode 2 came out, there were more people watching. And when episode 3 came out, now more people were watching.
Yeah, and you know what happens when Netflix releases a new thing? Like, people talk about it for like a couple weeks, and then they ignore it until the next thing comes out.
Right.
And
Tiger
so
King was 6 episodes and was not talked about for 6 weeks. But Mandalorian was talked about all 8 weeks of its run and for a couple weeks afterwards. And it's creating excitement for Season 2's trailer because people loved Season 1.
I heard about The Mandalorian. I don't hear about Netflix anymore because no one, like, you know, also I'm also mostly in anime communities, but I don't hear about, like Stranger Things was maybe the last time I really heard about a Netflix thing. And
I'm sure you heard about Tiger King.
What the fuck is, no.
Okay, well, you're also an old man. But, yeah, I mean, like, Netflix does still have things that come out that are big, but they aren't on the level.
They also pump out a shitload, and so, like, maybe, so not nearly as much as they pump out, like, by a long shot becomes talked about, you know?
Right.
Like,
it's almost disgusting to say that fucking,
But he's in Crunchyroll's pocket, so he has to say that it's a better, even though they also release stuff weekly. So...
Yeah, just that weekly stuff is an archaic, outdated form of it's fucking ridiculous to hear, and it's just showing that you're stupid and everything you're saying is intentionally biased to further your point. And it's gross, and it actually really upset me.
And we're not halfway through the video yet.
Ridiculous.
Anyway, with the exception of ad breaks, the internet has made media in general a lot easier to enjoy in its purest form. We can access almost any piece of narrative art that exists in release order on our own time. But that doesn't necessarily make it invalid to break sequence, and it certainly doesn't mean that the pilot episode or chapter of a story will always be the best introduction to it.
Okay, here's all I'm gonna say before he continues. This is again, and I think this is the part of the video where I'm about to start going super fucking hard into it. They are not called pilots in Japan.
No.
Right? It is very clear from the way that we see Japanese media, like, you don't make a pilot for an anime, right? The anime gets greenlit before it even starts production, and it gets made. The first episode of a show in Japan, it's not a pilot. You can even see that in Actage from the start of that, right? That wasn't a pilot being made.
You mean the drama? Or
the drama. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, which was on the last, the last arc, yeah.
Pilot. It got greenlit and was made. And I'm not going to say pilots don't exist, because they might, but to talk about the pilot episode and show Dragon Ball, first of all, that's not what a pilot episode is. But besides that, the
closest that there would be to a pilot in Japan would be the one shot that the author submits to Shonen Jump to get published sometime up to a year over, like, when the series actually starts. Like, there's the Ghost Seer, I think, is the new series that literally just started a couple days ago. And yeah, if you look, there's a one shot that came out in 2018. Like, that's the pilot for the series that is just starting. But that's not how it works for TV, at least not for anime and, you know, that or anything like that. Because again, like, they're or dramas, or like they're just made. Like, they don't have to pitch it to a TV studio because, like, they're already pretty close knit. Like, they don't need to make pilots for we're gonna make a new Super Sentai season. Do you want me to show you this pilot? No, they're already in talks with producers about it to get toys deals done. Like, it's already a thing before it even starts.
Well, a lot of times, especially for anime, and I know you've fucking seen Shirobako, Jeff, so I know you know this. The TV studios go to the animation studios and meet with the producers of the animation studios and the TV studios, and then of the publishers all meet together to talk about it. It is not some, like, they create it and bring it to the TV studio. The TV studio is in the discussion from the beginning.
Right. Like, they don't have to make a pilot to shop it around, which is what a pilot is for. Right. They just make the show.
And so the level of, like, ethnocentrism he's displaying by calling it a pilot, and I know it's just one word, but the word is indicative of the way he's looking at it. And he's looking at it purely through his own Western lens when we're talking about media from a different culture. And it's not the same as if I'm talking about something that came out in Britain through a Western lens. And the reason for this is really simple. A lot of Western storytelling comes from the same mythology, right? You can trace it back to the Bible and to Greek and Roman myths, right? and maybe a little bit further back, but that's what a lot of our things and our archetypes and story things come from.
Right.
The East have their own religions, right? Where we have like Christianity, they have like Buddhism, and in Japan Shintoism, right? And these religions,
right? And then they
Hinduism in India,
right? And they have Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Tale of Genji, what's the fucking Journey to the West?
Oh, okay.
I was Journey to the. Well, I think that's maybe is that an older story? I don't know because I know the Kurosawa movie, but I was Journey to the West.
Jimbo was an older story that
okay, gotcha.
But yeah. And
okay,
Journey to the West.
Well, and that's a super relevant one because Dragon Ball, One Piece actually might, they both take a lot from that story. I read an analysis that brings up Jujutsu Kaisen about how like one of the characters is meant to be an analog to Sun Wukong, and a different main character is meant to be an analog to Buddha, because these are the references that the people reading these stories would understand, because that's the mythology and the stories they know. Like, so it's and that's just in the writing of it. Where in the production of it, it's like, again, America is it's the sequel to Britain. Not quite, but yeah, again, we're close. So if we're going to talk about the production of British TV shows, I would assume that they have pilots too, but I don't know that for sure, but that would be my first assumption, because again, the culture is just more similar. But anyway,
right. And like, again, that's that's like part of the problem is you're not looking at it through that. And I'm not saying that someone has to read Journey to the West, right? Or know everything about Buddhism or Shintoism to experience these stories. Obviously, that's not the case. But something that I think a lot of people who get really into anime should start to do at a certain point is kind of combine the aspects of the culture you can pick up from these other things and these storytelling tropes and ideas you can pick up, and then start to compare them and realize how they're different in a lot of ways from the culture that you understand here, and then look at it through the lens that you can, through learning more, start to grow about the media you're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And you can't just always look at it as if it's the same as you watching Friends on fucking Netflix, because they're not the same.
No.
With TV shows, manga, any kind of serialized narrative really, the artists making them are figuring out what their story should be and how to tell it as they're telling it. Few series are totally planned out in advance, and even when they are, even in the case of things like One Piece, plans change. New, better ideas arise. It can take a while for a series to really hit its stride, and sometimes you'll get your best impression by jumping forward to a great standalone part, then going back to experience the build-up to it.
So, you know what, Geoff? I agree with you there.
I actually think that that's the most true thing you said.
Yeah, because, look, I'll bring this up later. I'm obviously laughing because I think I'm the funniest man on the planet, right?
No. What is it?
It's not uploading.
That's sad. I will say, I really like that Wano animation. Shit was crispy.
There it is. So, you'll notice, he's even showing Zoro. And how did I get into One Piece? My brother borrowed an issue of American Shonen Jump from a friend, and it had a bunch of chapters of some shonen series. Like, I remember there was a fight in Sandland where the main character fights a bug monster. I saw a bit of the first encounter with Zabuza, and I had no fucking clue what was going on in Naruto. But in One Piece, it was Zoro versus Kabaji. And I had no fucking clue what was happening, but I thought it was cool. And right. So, this watch order that I made for One Piece, it's obviously a direct parody of Jeff's, JoJo watch order. But part of the reason I did this is because, this is legitimately how I got into One Piece. Unironically. I read Zoro vs. Kabaji, a bunch of times because I had that issue of Jump and I thought it was cool. Then I caught it on TV, in the middle of the Baratier arc. And I just watched until, the Nami flashback, which they, combined 2 episodes in one. And it was really fucked because it was the 4Kids dub. And then I watched it online. And, yeah, I really, One Piece is my favorite thing. I got into it in a stupid head-ass way. But, enjoying again, we're not talking about just, getting into something and enjoying something. We're talking about, especially, us coming from this lens of, people who like to understand the media and talk about it and also have to deal with fucking head-ass takes from people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Again, we brought up the Dragon Ball example earlier, where, Dragon Ball Z, yeah, it helped people enjoy the series and, get into including me. I got into more anime stuff probably because it's Dragon Ball Z. And I mean, it was already there because Pokemon and Power Rangers, being adapted from Super Sentai. But you know, it was another big piece to that. But, you know, if someone came up to me and they'd only seen One Piece this way, and they like, yeah, I'm watching, like, I Skype was slow, so I just skipped it. Like, I'm just gonna be like, no, shut the fuck up. I don't care what you think.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And the reason I think we're allowed to talk about it through this is because he literally mentions at the beginning that this is good because it creates healthy discussion on the series. That's literally his words, not ours. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that, you know, obviously, I'm not ever going to be able to take anyone's enjoyment away from them. If someone enjoys something, you're free to enjoy it. If you want to watch, you know, just Giorno Diavolo in part 5, you know, go for it. You're more than allowed to, okay?
Yeah.
But, like...
Well, again, like, and to kind of finish my point...
Discussion.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, and I want to finish my point. Like, I didn't become, like, this, you know, One Piece, you know, people, you know, care for what I say about One Piece in this community. A lot of people on my Discord server found me and, you know, really connected to my stuff because they love One Piece and because I was able to frame these things and explain certain things in certain ways that people, you know, jived with. But I didn't do that by, like, watching, like, 10 episodes of the 4Kids dub and then just, like, skipping Skypea. No, I've read the entire series multiple times, like, in the intended order. And so, like, you know, because that's the best way to understand it. What do you know? Maybe if the best discourse is created by people who understand the thing they're experiencing the best, which means recognizing the culture that it's from and how it was made and why it was made, why these things are happening, and going through it from the freaking beginning. All right.
I have a question for you, though. I'm just legitimately curious. Why did you mute the audio?
My computer speakers were broken, so I could still tell what was going on because they had subtitles.
But you couldn't actually hear it.
No, until my friend at high school told me, you know, you could just, like, plug earbuds in and hear through that. So, like, the first episode, like, that episode that I specifically mentioned in Water 7, I was actually, like, my computer tower was on the ground, and my earbuds weren't very long, so I was, like, kind of leaning towards the ground so I could fit one of the earbuds into my ear, while the other, my head was, like, sideways looking up at the screen, watching Fukuro versus Frankie, and hearing One Piece for the first time in Japanese.
Oh my god.
But I enjoyed One Piece, I just didn't listen to it for, like, 200 episodes or so.
Imagine if you had said when you first put it in, the voice acting was better in my head.
Right, that's why I kind of want to get the absurdity of, like, again, watching it when you're younger and you don't, you know, like, because that's a really, like, you know, if there's people who've done that, then I'm actually very curious as I assume no, like, because most people probably had working, functioning equipment, where I just didn't have computer speakers that worked, but,
yeah, well, and I don't know, I feel like, you know, there are a lot of times, like, you made such a good point earlier that, like, yeah, when you're a kid, you don't have an option, right? And kids nowadays do have those options. And you know what I see with kids now? When, like, we watch shows on, like, Netflix with kids, they want to watch it in order.
Yeah, and they probably want to watch it and then rewatch it, because I remember as a kid, we'd rewatch the shit of, because we only had movies, we didn't have the money or interest in, like, long TV series and getting the full, you know, everything, so we'd go to Blockbuster and rent, like, a few episodes of a show. Like, I've seen, like, a couple episodes of Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, or the Sonic the Animated Series. Like, I had no context in the rest of the show because I just would rent these episodes, and I'd watch them and rewatch them while we had, for that week or few days that we had them, but, like, again, I didn't have any other option. Because I guarantee if I had Sonic the Animated Series Season 1, I would watch that shit a bunch, you know, but I didn't. So we watched Toy Story and Lion King and all these movies that we had a lot instead, because that's all we had.
Well, I mean, they will get upset with me because, like, we'll watch, like, I mean, not good cartoons that are as good as SpongeBob, but we'll watch shows that are, like, episodic 12-minute cartoon series. And they want me to start from the last episode we watched. They get upset if I just click a random episode.
Huh.
Because, like, we're skipping stuff. And, like, I'm talking about, like, 7-year-olds who
that's interesting.
barely pay attention and, like, play around while the episode's on, but they want to...
They don't like the idea of missing something, because, like, that's part of the work that they aren't experiencing, which... ultimately, you know, and that's what Geoff is even saying is, like, yeah, you get interested and you go back and experience the whole work. And that's also what he says at the end, because he says at the end of the day, he wants everyone to go through all of JoJo, but he contrives this order because part 1's scary, vampire's scary.
Well,
I don't know.
the other problem with his order, and here's something.
Well, we'll get to the order specifically later if you want.
Sorry, but, just the idea of skipping stuff and this idea of going back to it. The problem is it's the same. It's the same when anyone asks me. Any time I get the question, right? I actually get this question a lot as like a manga guy, right? Who's very much about the manga over the anime all the time. I always get, well, can I just start from when the anime ends? And I always say no.
No, yeah.
And I think it's the same with skipping something. If you're going to experience something, you should experience that piece all, right? An anime is not a substitution for a manga. I would say that, like, an anime...
Even if it does it better, I still want to have experienced the whole thing. Like, Chihayafuru and Hidamari Sketch are great examples. Because, you know, well, Chihayafuru I need to reread the manga, but Hidamari Sketch I 100% like the anime more. But I still also love the manga because there's stuff that they don't adapt. In the first chapter, Hiro and Sai bring home alcohol and, like, Yuno gets fucking drunk. Like, but they didn't animate that because they kind of can't animate minors getting wasted, you know, on television. Like, that's like literally something that, like, you know, whenever that does happen, they usually say, oh, it wasn't actually alcohol, but they got drunk anyway, haha, even though, like, obviously in the original source material probably was alcohol, you know. So, like, there's stuff in the manga that I can't get in the anime, and the anime adds up so much that I love it even more. So it's like there is no like, oh, just start with from where the manga ends, like, because no, and I want to have experience, like, yeah, even Chihayafuru season 1, even though I love the changes that they make, I'm still gonna read it from the beginning because that's how the story was made.
And here's the one case I'll make for JoJo's, because, well, I do think that, like, there, you know, it is fair enough that, like, the anime for most of them adapts everything, and you're not missing anything really if you pick it up. Part of what's so cool about JoJo's, or really any long-running manga like that, is watching the art change over time.
Yes, right? That's what I kind of brought up earlier with the evolution of writing and art. Yeah, because, like, that's part of the appeal to me in these long-running stories is seeing, like One Piece. I like One Piece more now because I'm seeing how, like, a fucking astonishingly written Wano is. And, like, thinking, and even Whole Cake Island, which is my favorite arc, and thinking, you know, like, as much as I love, like, Enies Lobby, or, you know, Water 7 Saga, rather, or some of these older, like, the Paramount War, like, the fact that Oda is just still getting better, like, is crazy to me. Like, and you, like, have a similar feeling for Hajime no Ippo.
And the way that, like, art, like, the art of the series continues to get better.
Yeah.
I would say it's a major draw of JoJo's. Because Araki stops drawing these tiny little faces on these big bodies. And his art just gets better and more interesting to look at. And cooler. And he does cooler things with his paneling. And the way he tries to frame things as the series goes that he doesn't do early on. Right? One of the things that Araki's one of the only mangaka I see do are his circle panels. Where he'll do this 2-page spread and have a little circle on like a side that's showing a zoomed in version of something, right? Or a different angle of something to accentuate something. He is one of the only manga I've ever seen do these little
I've only seen that once, and that was in the Moon Knight comic run I read. But it's uncommon. It is, and especially, like, because we read way more manga, so
yeah. And part of what's cool about that is seeing him start to use that and then like it and use it more, and seeing him start to use different techniques more and more and start using some less and less as he evolves and changes and finds things he likes, you know? And that's like context about the actual manga making going on that you completely miss, that I would say helps the enjoyment of the series. If you're
Though you have to remember that I'm pretty sure Mother's Basement hasn't read those older parts.
No, definitely not. He's definitely the kind of guy who would just watch after.
Well, because even if you look at his watch order, he doesn't say the volume that you or chapter that you would start on. He just says the episode.
He just says to watch it.
Yeah, he says, like, oh, start part, like, he says watch part 4 and then start part season 1 episode 10, because that starts part 2. Like, he doesn't give you chapters or volumes, because again, if he gave you volumes, it would be like, because it would be partway through another story at the start of that volume. What do you know?
I mean, even with, you know, this is a good point you just reminded me of. Even with parts 1 and 2, they are the same show. They are in the same season, right? The show doesn't even, like, the actual show itself doesn't consider them different. It's like, what, did Bones not know what they were doing when they called it fucking JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Like,
yeah.
Now, it's important to be aware that not all episodes or ostensibly self-contained story arcs are created equal, and not all of them make for good jumping on points. Some of the very best parts of serialized narratives are moments that build heavily on what's come before, and simply jumping into a series at its best rated episode may not actually allow it to put its best foot forward. A while back, The Verge published an article about Avatar: The Last Airbender that got widely dunked on, advising that people put off by the series' tonally wonky introduction skip forward to one of its better standalone episodes to see for themselves how great it really gets. The one they chose to highlight was Season 2, Episode 7, Zuko Alone, and I can see why someone might think it's a good intro to the series on paper. It is one of the best written episodes, and because Zuko is, alone in it, familiarity with the show's cast isn't required to understand the bulk of its story. The problem, in practice, is that the heart of that story is the apex of a character arc that the series has been building toward for 27 straight episodes. You can certainly appreciate the things that are good about the episode out of context, but the things that make it great will be utterly incomprehensible to anyone who's not familiar with Zuko and Iroh's journey to that point, or their complicated relationship with the gang. That's, gang with 2 A's, by the way, a pun that makes about as much sense outside of text as Zuko Alone does out of context.
Stop here.
Okay, before we get to the Avatar point, I do want to say he was talking about, right before that, he said that, not all the best moments, can just be experienced on their own and have to build on anything. I would say there is almost no moment in any story ever that is good in a vacuum. Like, actually.
And if it is, it probably is, it's either better with the context or it wasn't that good in the first place. And, because I sort of came to this conclusion because I watched the anime for Chaos Child, which is an adaptation of what would become my favorite visual novel ever. Or at least at present, as someone who hasn't played a huge amount, by the way. But, and I enjoyed it for what it was. And playing the visual novel, I recognize that, it's definitely what the anime changed, but I got enough out of the anime that I still enjoyed it. And going through the visual novel, I was told, I saw takes don't watch the anime because it will actually ruin your experience with the visual novel. And the opposite happened because I actually, I did know some twists and stuff, and my experience was different because I'd experienced the story in some fashion before, but I also noticed foreshadowing, and I had a better idea of what was already going on thematically because I already experienced the story. So when I played it once, I had this understanding of it that when it going through it for the first time, just a visual novel, might have had more surprises, but I still really fucking enjoyed it, and I understood it. I made 2 videos, one of them being this full thematic rundown of what the story is trying to say. So it's I don't think seeing things out of context or not, or seeing things beforehand, I think the more context you have, the better it is. And that's even what Geoff is saying here. Zuko Alone is better if you have more context. What do you know? And
it's wild that he's saying that with this, but okay, a lot of times if you have a show that has a standalone episode or a standalone chapter, there's a reason that a lot of those times people don't really like those episodes, or don't really like those, but standalone things are a lot of times called filler, or they aren't people's favorite episodes because longer series or any series is better the more
context that matters, the better, or that is relevant.
Obviously, it's not a one-to-one of build-up equals quality, but you can't just have, you can't just watch the final fight of Gurren Lagann and fully appreciate it. You can like the animation, you can think it looks cool, but you can't fully appreciate, the themes of what's going on and the visuals of what's going on.
Right, and that's kind of what he's...
understand that when you get Super Ting on top of Gurren Lagann, the point of that is that it's Kamina, because Kaminas will created what Simon pushes, and Kamina pushed his dreams into Simon and his goals into Simon, and Simon is pushing that from Kamina onto everyone else, and that is what is going on. And like, you would completely miss that if you hadn't been watching.
And that's what he's saying with Zuko alone, and why it's not actually a good jumping. Like, he disagrees with the Verge article that's basically saying skip parts. But like, the problem is that he's accepting that is true for Avatar, but in order to do the same for JoJo, he has to be reductive and dismissive about Araki's intent, which we literally showed earlier. He just says, start with part 1, or I guess part 7. Or he has to be dismissive of the themes that it's trying to explore, one of which is legacy, which it needs continuing narrative that he built to explore the way he wanted it to. Like, he has to and he has to dismiss the entire industry and why manga is the way it is. Like, he has to twist all these things for his narrative, but but this Verge article is right, even though it's saying the exact same things I'm saying. But this one's wrong because I disagree with it. And if you disagree with Mount JoJo, you're a gatekeeper.
I guess he's gatekeeping Avatar. To go back, by the way, to the Araki thing, I meant to point this out earlier. I did. Something I think is really interesting about the way he phrases it is even like, you can start with part 7 if you want to catch up to JoJolion quicker. But he still doesn't recommend starting from part 7.
And I do think, all the references and stuff, and there's especially one big thing at the end of Steel Ball Run that it just hits more if you have all the context. And even there, like, the fact, like, here's an example, like, there's characters with similar names and stuff, like Diego Brando, who's deliberately like reflecting back on Dio Brando. So it's like, that's context that, so do you need the context to understand his character? No. But it helps you understand like what he's doing because you recognize that very important character from parts 1 through 6.
There are moments where if you know who Dio is and you understand things in JoJo's, there are some moments, I would say, in part 7 that are legitimately ridiculously surprising and like actually fucking like threw me for a loop. My first time reading it, where like multiple things happened with the way some of the character relationships played out. I was not expecting, and I thought were more interesting because you know that it's kind of derivative in a way of the first 3 parts.
Right, and I think the same holds true in part 8, where which characters are named after characters from part 4 and what role they have in part. It's very unsuspect. It's surprising and interesting because of those references.
I would say, from my understanding, even the main character, even Gappy, has like some really interesting subversions going on with who he is and the names and things like that.
The character, because family is also super relevant to that story. But like, who are the characters named after and referencing is right. Yeah, exactly. Like there's stuff going on there that you wouldn't really like get if you haven't read part, even though I think you could still understand and enjoy the series on a level, like especially part 7. I do think, even though there's definitely stuff that's heightened by having that context, like it's not like you're not just straight up missing fucking context, which you would be in those earlier JoJo parts, because it is a separate universe, right. But it's still like at the end of the day is better for having that prior context. But anyway, I think we're off topic.
Let's keep going.
Considering that the question of who Zuko will become under his uncle's influence is a big part of what makes them both interesting villains in the first season, you could even argue that starting there might harm your viewing experience overall. It certainly has the potential to blunt the impact of episodes like The Storm and The Blue Spirit. But that said, I do know some people, anime fans, who have been turned off by Avatar in its first episode, so I do see the value in the idea behind the article. And I would instead suggest that such folks dip their toes in with the series' first 2-parter, Winter Solstice. Starting at episode 7, this mini-arc comes early enough in the series that it doesn't really work from or spoil any major moments of character growth. It also serves as an introduction to a major part of Avatar's setting, the spirit world, and that takes up a lot of the episode, so you don't really need the context of 6 prior episodes worth of world building to get it. It highlights what each member of Team Avatar brings to the table pretty well, and the B-plot with Zuko and Iroh lets you get to know them as individuals before they're thrown into conflict with Aang in the second part of the storyline. That second part, for its part, gives the main cast even more chances to shine, does a lot to establish the fascistic rot that has infested even the most sacred corners of the Fire Nation, while showing us that there are still good people resisting it there, and demonstrates how satisfying the series' non-episodic narrative payoffs can really be. Is that how I'd want to watch Avatar for the first time? No, but for someone who's seen a bit of the pilot and thinks its peculiar blend of anime action and Nicktoons goop humor just isn't for them, Winter Solstice offers a chance to glimpse just how good the series gets without really spoiling anything that comes before or after it. And if that's what it takes to get someone to watch one of the best shows ever, it's totally worth sacrificing the theoretical ideal that they were never going to experience. And even then, in a lot of cases, it is kinda presumptive to just assume that the release order is the ideal way to experience a story.
Okay, so, like, what he's saying is, again, like, people struggling to get into something, and, like, so he's talking very personal and anecdotal. Is friends who have struggled to get into Avatar. I would not tell them, skip to episodes 7 and 8. I would say, watch through episode 7 and 8, because he gave perfectly good sound reasons for why, like, 7 and 8 better represent the appeal of the show. But, like, if you're not willing to watch 7 or 8 episodes, then why are you picking up a 70 episode show?
I had a friend who started with episode 7 and 8 of Avatar, and it completely ruined it for him. They couldn't get into it. They didn't know what was going on, and because they watched those episodes first, they didn't like it. And then later, they decided to start with episodes 1 and 2. And they got really into it and found it really fun the entire time. No, that's not fucking true. But the point is, anyone can make up a fucking anecdote that doesn't fucking matter to prove their point.
I believed you. I trusted you.
Anecdotes serve no real, like, they don't make points. Okay, anecdotes can be used to enhance a point that you make outside of it, but an anecdote is not a fucking point, because anyone can make up an anecdote that can serve any point. Their bullshit is points. Okay, and people can just stop using it, like, oh, this is what my friend did. Dude, good for your fucking friend.
Like, that's my issue
with
his whole... I
had a friend who couldn't read, and he didn't like when I fucking put JoJo's in front of him because he was blind. That anecdote serves nobody.
So anyway, what I was going to say there is that, like, the thing about, like, if you have a friend and you want to get him into a thing, well, one, maybe heckling him about getting him into the thing is going to make things worse for him. So here's an anecdote. I have a different friend who's not WattheWut, who fucking hates Evangelion. Because he watched it, I was like, I don't like it. And then it's like, oh no, it gets good later. He watched it, still didn't like it. Oh no, it gets good later. Finished it, watched Evangelion, he still fucking hates it. What do you know? Like, maybe at this point you just, like, look, and so I also watched, like, 30 episodes of Gintama. I liked one of them. And
unlucky.
I had people who were saying, like, oh, well, if you watch the arc that ends around episode 62, and you don't like it,
58 to 62.
Then Gintama's just not for you. 60 episodes is a huge investment, but, like, because I would not say skip to episode 7 and 8. I would say, like, just watch 2, 7, because that's, if you get to Baratie or Arlong and you don't have anything to like in One Piece, then you know what? That's more than enough. You've given it more than enough a shot. But I wouldn't say skip to Baratie or Arlong. Like, I think that's absurd.
That's
and, like,
true.
and my other issue is, like, getting someone into something is, like, a personal thing, because you're talking about one person and their specific interests and tastes. But what Geoff is doing is he's assuming everyone is going to react as the same way. Like, why would you make like, okay, if you have a friend who's like, oh man, I'm kind of interested in Steel Ball Run, but I didn't like but I don't know, it's pretty long. I'd tell him, did you start from part 1? He's like, no. Then I'd tell him to read part 1, and then I'd go from there based on what I know about them and, like, how they react to it. And, like, again, it's as a very personal thing, not like contriving this watch order and saying follow this, because that's not personal.
Yeah, and like, there's even, like, if you want to get a friend into something, why not sit down and watch it with them?
Yeah.
But
right, like Super Average Wolf watching Hunter x Hunter with Wooly.
Okay, so I also think that, like, there's some other things he says that were so hypocritical, it blew my mind. I actually could not believe the words he was saying some of that. Where he's like, oh, but if you watch this episode in season 2, it'll spoil the character arcs for you, and you won't know what happened. What if you skip a JoJo part? If you skip to part 3, it spoils parts 1 and 2, right? If you skip to fucking part 4, it spoils part 3.
There's a part in part 2 where, like, after the cars fight, the characters think Joseph is dead. Like, and I actually saw that screenshot getting posted around, and people were like, "What? I'm watching JoJo right now. Joseph dies!" Like, they were shocked. But if they'd watched the basement, if they watched like part 4 first, like in the basement order, or if they just watched part 3 because that's the popular iconic one, then they would know that he's not fucking dead, and that moment gets ruined for them. And never mind, like, just, like, how about the fact that, you know, Jonathan, like, part 1 opens with Jonathan and Dio, like, after, you know, the time skip, Jonathan wants to be comrades with Dio, and, like, Dio doesn't, like, he wants to kill George, but he never says anything about killing Jonathan until, like, his plans are revealed and shit, like, a little later, like, there's, you know, but if you know that, like, oh, Dio becomes this uber super vampire, then maybe Dio finding the mask and using it on himself, like, isn't surprising, like... But I guess we'll talk about that later when we get to the order, but it's like...
Yeah, I do want to say that, you know, another example of a character arc being spoiled, which, you know, I believe that Mother's Basement thinks that, you know, there aren't many character arcs in JoJo's, because he seems to be too dismissive of the series as a whole to understand, what I'd actually say is actually a pretty good character arc, which is, you know, so you have Jotaro, right? He's someone who at the beginning of part 3 doesn't talk to people. He's very standoffish. He only gets into fights with people. We see that the only person he has any kind of good relationship with is his mom, right? And even then he calls her a bitch and yells at her all the time, right? And throughout the course of part 3, when he's forced to work with other people, he learns to treasure relationships around him, right? And it's why, by the way, he looks at the photograph of everyone he traveled to Egypt with and smiles at the end of part 3 on the plane, right? And it's not just because, you know, most of them are dead, but it's because he found people that he can treasure and learns how important it is to rely on people, right? And that's why the entirety of part 4, another great character arc that's spoiled by the next part, is Koichi. And the fact that you have this character who is kind of a no one. There's a reason Koichi's the narrator in part 4 at the beginning. Is because he's kind of a nobody. He has nothing really going for him. He's not useful to anyone, right? But it's why then at the end, Jotaro says, hey, Koichi's kind of a dependable guy, and I can kind of really, you know, count on him. And then... And
that's why in part 5 he sends Koichi to Italy to find Giorno, right?
Italy. And if you start with part 5... If you started with part 5 before parts 3 or 2 or 4, now... The fact that Jotaro is willing to work with people and that he's willing to trust Koichi and that Koichi is a dependable person are both major character arcs that kind of the parts are centered around on a lot of levels are completely spoiled for the reader. And they completely know what's going on. The same way that if you learn about Zuko's character arc before you watch the show, it spoiled his character arc for you. What a fucking surprise.
Sad.
I feel like I have to get so specific with what we're talking about because
especially
he's just missing everything the series is doing.
Right, like, because again, it's this goofy, wacky series. Nothing matters. There's no point to it. It's just goofy and wacky. It's memes. JoJo memes. Like, let's just fucking ignore.
They're called JoJokes.
I'm gonna kill myself. But yeah, let's just ignore this story that this man has literally put his entire life into. Because it's funnier that way. Haha. Araki doesn't care. He put out a whole book on writing manga. He doesn't care about the writing of his story. What?
Sure, in the case of Avatar, which follows the same cast of characters as they develop progressively while working toward a singular goal, watching every episode in order except The Great Divide makes a lot of sense. But sometimes a non-linear narrative can be more satisfying in its own way. And sometimes the linear path is kind of covered in broken glass for the first 20 feet or so, and you really just want to go around it. Okay, this is a very brave and controversial take that no JoJo fans ever heard before, but Phantom Blood isn't the best, actually. It's weirdly paced. Fully half of its cast is entirely forgettable, like nobody would remember Dyer without Straits, and we only remember him because of Part 2. And while its action is certainly bizarre, it's not particularly cool or dramatically satisfying outside the 2 fights with Dio, and maybe that one bit where Jack the Ripper pops out of a horse. Araki was still figuring out what the series should be as he wrote it, and while it gets good toward the end, it shows. The anime does tweak some of those problems and fix the Parts' ugly Fist of the North Star clone artwork, but still, if I didn't have a JoJo fanatic friend telling me as every episode aired, yeah, it's rough, but stick with it, trust me, it gets good, honestly, I probably would have dropped it around episode 5 or 6.
I like Part 1 a lot, actually.
It's almost like every JoJo part is good, except for the ones that What doesn't like.
I just want to throw this out there. I actually like Part 1 more than Part 2 and Part 3. And Part 6.
That's interesting. See, because like I haven't read it. I haven't read it in literal ages, and I want to reread the whole series at some point. But like I did read this excellent blog post called Deconstructing Dio, where it just dissects his character from Part 1 to Part 3, and every part that he shows up in, and like the writing, and like I want to go back to Van and Blood because I think there's like really interesting and good writing stuff there, and like in its conflict that is like interesting and cool, and it's like, yeah, he was a relatively young author and he evolved over the course of the story, but like again, if Geoff really wanted to make it like a hot JoJo take, maybe Phantom Blood Good actually would have been a better take.
I mean, I think he's joking when he says that, right? Because I mean, I think the general consensus is that Part 1's the worst part, right?
Yeah.
Again, I would put Part 1 personally over 2, 3, and 6. I actually really like it. Is it the most straightforward JoJo part? Without a doubt. Right? Both Dio in Part 1 and Jonathan in Part 1 are these very straightforward characters. It's very, I guess, cut and dry with how it kind of treats its storytelling. But I still think there's some good stuff going on in there, right? There's still some, like, enjoyable moments. I think Jonathan is actually a really endearing main character, especially for the first part, because he's, like, again, part of it's supposed to be that Jonathan is the embodiment of good, and Dio is the embodiment of evil, right? Mm-hmm. And then, as it goes, you kind of start to muddy the waters a bit. And it's why some of the first stuff we see is, one of the first things we see of Joseph is him getting cops to leave a thief alone, right? Because now we're starting to muddy those waters a little bit.
And see a person who isn't as good as, that, right.
And the entire baseline setup for that idea and why it's supposed to be kind of shocking that Joseph is kind of a piece of shit, which he definitely is, right? No, you did hear that. None. We'll talk about it in a second. That idea of Joseph being a piece of shit, being shocking, again, is because Jonathan is like God's gift to mankind. He is like the nicest fucking greatest guy ever, does like nothing wrong and charms people through that, but he doesn't have that much actual charisma, right? And so then you start to get he's
Joseph, kind of a dope, yeah.
Yeah, then in contrast, you get Joseph, who is extremely charismatic, only really charms people through his charisma and his wit, and is kind of a piece of
lying
shit.
Like, let's go peek on this girl. I hope she's not my mother.
Right, or, let me have sex with a girl who's, like, over half my age and have a kid with her in Japan. You know what I mean? Let me be super racist towards the fact that my daughter married a Japanese guy. Like, Joseph is kind of supposed to be a piece of shit. I know you guys think he's funny, so you want to stan him, and that's okay, because the point is supposed to be he's a really charismatic, witty piece of shit. Right? Like, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Part 1 sets up a lot, and I actually really like it. And then Nunn mentioned something, which is should also be talked about, which is he's complaining about the manga art and how bad the manga art looks and how bad things are in the manga. And he says, oh, but the anime fixed it, and that's why when I was watching the anime, I was able to get through it. And it's like...
Well, no, he only got through it because of a friend, but yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the mix.
He did positively compare the anime art to the manga art, yes.
Right, well, and not even the art. He says that it fixes some of the pacing issues and the character issues, and he's complaining about part 1 of the manga when he doesn't even tell people to read the manga until the anime runs out.
Yeah,
know?
so it's like it doesn't matter if he's talking about getting into JoJo because he only cares about like just watch the anime, like because so why even bring up the manga?
He's bringing up the manga the same
to
way,
make part one look even worse than it is, which again is like I think.
And I've already made a point for why you should read the manga the whole way through, even through the parts you've already seen, because there's legitimate things to glean from it that people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, Phantom Blood has its good points. Those Dio fights are legendary, his childhood feud with JoJo is fun, if a bit slow, and if you dig the gothic horror aesthetic, it immediately gains 2 bonus points, but the space between those great moments is wide and rough, and it's still a pretty off-putting introduction to the series overall.
Just want to say he said, "Oh, it's wide and rough." It's fucking 6 volumes. Not 5.5 volumes. That's not a lot.
You can literally finish part 1.
That's One Piece up to like maybe the start of Baratier.
Not 20 minutes. You can read part 1 of the manga, right? Okay, say someone didn't want to watch 8 or so episodes of anime. I get that. I completely agree. Read Color JoJo's part 1. You can finish it in 3 hours at most.
If you're not even a fast reader, right? Yeah, like
yeah. You can finish it in 3 hours. And the reason, by the way, with JoJo's, you have to look at volumes, because this is something someone like Geoff wouldn't know. Like, actually just wouldn't know, because he clearly doesn't know anything. JoJo's, especially the other parts, came out in a period where jump chapters were only 13 pages long. Right?
No,
I mean,
that's
Carson,
not...
you've been reading Kinnikuman.
No. That's not because it was jump... Kinnikuman was 15 pages chapters because it was a comedy series, which is still true today. No.
Dragon Ball was 13
because it was a gag series.
No, it was 13 pages long its entire fucking run.
No, what?
Yes. Crafts, I read Dragon Ball early this year. All the chapters are like 15 pages.
Okay, well, Kinnikuman has 20-page chapters where I'm reading it now, so...
Okay, well, that I don't know, because and part 1 of JoJo's also starts with low page chapters. Or low page chapters.
Okay. I don't know why, because Otoko Ippiki Gaki Desho also has 19 20-page chapters, and it's older than both of them, so...
I'm just telling you. I mean, current comedy chapters...
Roboco was 15... Roboco is 15 pages.
20 the entire time, though.
Roboco is 15.
Well, that's because it's bad, and they want to get it fucking over with.
Shut up, Vindy. You're...
Like, I'm just telling you that, like, a lot of manga back then, like Dragon Ball into Z was... Or into, Saiyan Saga shit was 13-page chapters. I remember fucking looking at it. Because the fucking page-to-volume ratio doesn't work. If it wasn't. It's like 300 chapters in 20... It's like 324 chapters in 26 volumes. Let me look how many chapters it is, actually. Because now you have me not believing myself.
Yeah, no, I'm checking, too.
It's 325 chapters in 26 volumes. So if I go to a random chapter, if I go to chapter 193, it's 14 pages.
So I just checked... so chapter 11 of part 1 is 19 pages.
Okay. Well...
With JoJo, so...
Crafts don't... I'm fucking malding. I'm posting my proof, because I have it right fucking here. 14 pages for Dragon Ball.
Which chapter?
193 of Z. This is literally... it's Trunks versus Cell.
Does it... Okay, the 2 pages weren't counted as 1 page, right?
This is on the Shonen Jump app, where every page is an individual page. They don't count spreads.
Okay. Okay. I don't know why Dragon Ball is so short.
Because Toriyama's dead. Okay, let's just... we just gotta keep going, because we're so off topic now.
I know more than one person who bounced off Phantom Blood, even with encouragement, and only came to love JoJo after checking out Stardust Crusaders. Frankly, unless you're a big gothic horror nerd, I think you'll get a better first impression starting with any other part, and the manga's own history kind of validates that position. From what I can gather, JoJo languished in relative obscurity within the pages of Shonen Jump until parts 3 and 4 drew in new readership with the more unique battle concept of stands. Having Japanese protagonists and a modern setting probably didn't hurt either.
Do you want to say?
So you know what's an example of a modern Jump series that languished in obscurity? Bone Collection, because it got fucking canceled. Wanna know what didn't get fucking canceled? JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which made it 5 volumes for part 1, which is longer than most series that get axed go. Samurai 8 didn't make it. It was 5 volumes. Mitama Security was 4 or 5 volumes. That's interesting. But then part 1 also, there was part 2, which is what was the 6th volume, and also like it went up to fucking 17 or so. Like, maybe even though it wasn't a mega hit, like Geoff, again, he has that Western perspective. It's either obscure or it's a mega hit. Like, there's no nuance to what he's saying because like, he doesn't recognize it. Again, Jump has always been really competitive and acts series like it was nothing. So JoJo, like, yeah, JoJo didn't become the iconic hit it was until part 3, but that didn't mean it was a failure before that. Because if it was a failure before that, it wouldn't have made it to part 3.
Yeah, things don't languish in obscurity in a manga. Like, sure, they might not be in the top selling manga, but and yes, part 3 is the most popular part. But also, he explained the reasons for that, right? He mentions that part 2 has or part 3 is the first one with the Japanese protagonist and starts.
It also has stands which like were super influential. Like Togashi was like, "Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna use that in Chapter Black." For like, and it continued to like shift how powers were used in these action stories, right? It was super important and influential. But also like, you'd think like, I don't know, like, yeah, part 3 also got the OVAs, but none of it was adapted until like 2012, like for general like in full. And there was the Phantom Blood movie that got canceled. Yeah,
I was gonna say no. Didn't the movie?
Araki didn't like the Phantom Blood movie, so it never came out.
I thought it did like a theater screening.
A very short-lived one because Araki did not.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
They turned Speedwagon into like an episodic bad guy, and he didn't actually become a recurring character after that. So he was like, "Fuck this," I guess. That's all I heard about it. But yeah, it didn't happen. Basically,
yeah, but that's what I was gonna say is when they tried to actually adapt JoJo's, where did they fucking start? Right? Did it all come out? No, but where did they try to start the fucking story?
Like, yeah, and there was the part 3 adaptation, but it wasn't complete in the first place. There was like one that adapted like some of the later stuff at the end of the series. That's more, an OVA. It's not like a TV thing. It's meant for people who are already fans of it. Like it's not meant to be this complete story. It's just an OVA. Like again, like they'll put out little OVA episodes for people who just for or who are already buying it. Like they're not meant to be viewed as standalone things. Unless it I mean obviously not every OVA. It depends. Like Legend of Galactic Heroes, but that's adapted from a book. So it's like yeah. So, but yeah, they did that, and yet when they did adapt it for TV, guess where they fucking started?
Right. If he's right that it was obscure until part 3, why wouldn't they have just started with part 3?
Right, but people do like those parts, even if, again, not as much as some of the later stuff, but like...
Well, I think it's not even that. It's more than that, actually. It's that, like, if they could have just, like, let's not fucking mince words and act like people don't care about making fucking money. If they could have just started with part 3 and just made more money doing that quicker, that's what they would have done. But... they aren't going to do that because they know that it's a story you have to see all at once. It's why they didn't also just make a part 7 anime, right? It's why Data Productions doesn't have part 7 in the works and just come out with that as well. Because part 7 is also really popular and really critically acclaimed. And a part 7 anime would probably fucking do well. But they're not going to do that because they want to adapt the full story.
Yeah.
People tend to like things that are like things they already like. They're more likely to relate to characters who share common points of reference with them, too. And across 8 parts, JoJo has the potential to leverage those principles to draw in a wide and eclectic range of people. Fans of gangster movies, Twin Peaks, Indiana Jones, and Junji Ito manga. But if you want to draw those people into the fandom, you gotta let them gravitate toward what they like most first. Because if they do, then JoJo will become a thing they already like, and they'll be more likely to check out and appreciate what's good about the other parts that they might otherwise never have watched or read. I no longer regret how I started that anime cheat sheet video, but I do regret that I didn't end it by calling on viewers to watch and read the rest of JoJo if they like part 5. I figured they would. Unlike some of the people who got mad at that video, I don't think anyone's dumb enough to honestly see 24 minutes of jokes as a suitable substitute for over 40 hours of television, but I still wish I'd hedged that bet.
So one thing Geoff said there is that, people tend to like things that they already like. or things that are like things they already like. People also tend to dislike things that are like things they already dislike. So if they read part 1 of JoJo, and maybe they do get it, but they also don't like it, then maybe they're not going to like the rest of the series, and they're not going to like being forced into it. Because maybe if they start in a different part, they also won't like it. You know? That's up to them. It's not up to the... is Geoff's watch order going to change their minds? I don't know. Because there are people who don't like JoJo. And like it goes back to what I was saying about pushing people to watch things, and like I don't know, like again, like if you try part 1 and you don't like it, do whatever the fuck you want. Buy the volumes and use it as toilet paper. Watch fucking and here's another thing. If you really just want to get up to date with JoJo, then like watch part 6 as it's going. But also, like, that's 9 months, and that's more than enough time to go through the rest of the series. Like, if you absolutely fucking need to get up with the new recent thing, but like, you can, there's plenty of time to go through the rest of it. Like, if you absolutely need to for whatever reason.
Well, and there's also no reason people need to be watching things seasonally. There is no reason. Like, I actually, you know what? I'll just go ahead and say it. There's no reason to be watching part 5 as it comes out if you have not seen the previous seasons. Just like there's no reason to be watching ReZero Season 2 as it comes out if you have not seen the previous seasons. There's no reason to be watching Origairu Season 3 as it comes out if you have not seen the previous seasons. Seasonal anime does not matter that much. You should be watching things in order and as you enjoy them. And if you want to watch seasonals, there is a slew of seasonals coming out that you can talk about. And if everyone's talking about JoJo's and you want to be a part of it, then catch up and know that there's another part coming eventually. Or during the entire runtime of the series, get caught up and then be part of the discussion by the end. There's no reason to be doing it like that. And like, sure, people are going to, and I understand that. And there's nothing you can do to stop people from experiencing things wrong, right? For example, you get people like Digi, who constantly talks about just skipping episodes and seasons, because I know it's going to happen. And I think that mentality is stupid. And if you
guess what? She also doesn't understand things she talks about. Like, she watched the fucking, what was it, Shinsekai Yori, she watched the dub of that in the background and made a shitty video. Talk about why it's bad when she didn't understand it. And because she fucking wasn't paying attention to it. What do you fucking know? And she made a shitty video comparing Kuroko no Basket and Haikyuu when she liked Kuroko no Basket, and she dropped Haikyuu season 1 and then started season 2 and dropped it.
I know it's gonna happen.
Which is just very, again, disingenuous and disrespectful to the works that you're discussing. Which, again, like Araki said, like, well, I think you wouldn't understand part 3 if you don't know about Dio. So maybe you should respect his intent and consider reading part 1 before you read the rest.
Yeah, well, another way to even look at it is, you have, like, it's more of this fucking ethnocentric mindset of looking at things with, like, the Digi thing, or, like, just starting from, because, again, that's not how it is in Japanese culture, right? You don't just start a manga in the middle of it. But, it's a season, and I watch fucking season 2 of, I don't know, what's some shithole show? I watched season 2 of, like, fucking Friends as it came out, or fucking The Office, so I'm fine, because I did that with American television, episodic shows, and so I can do that with this long-running series that builds on itself and grows, and there's no problem with that, because that's just how I want to do it. And, like, it's just dumb. Yeah,
because, like, again, at the, and looking down on JoJo because they don't value it as a narrative is, like, a problem. And it doesn't just happen with JoJo. It happened, it's, I mean, I don't know. Like, well, I guess it is more of a problem with JoJo, but it's like, I just don't like that mindset in particular, because again, it's disrespectful. And I think, if you're going to try and engage with the art, you should be paying attention to what it's trying to say, whether you like it or not. I made my MHA video where the point of it was basically like, me not caring for MHA that much doesn't excuse, like, I do understand it. Even though, like, I'm not, and I was calling out people who liked it and didn't like it for not getting it, and or not getting why it's doing certain things. Because again, I do believe that not liking something isn't an excuse for not understanding it, especially if you're going to talk about it as an authority. Right. So it's like, and Geoff doesn't seem to get JoJo that much, even though he even likes it, like, because he doesn't understand why things are done the way it is, and it's kind of disappointing that this. Now I think about it, that this major figure in the discussion of the community discussion is stupid.
Yeah, I love when, like, we make these long, like, this isn't all the EWBs, when people make these long whatever, just to go, you're stupid, or like to throw a little insult in there after a long like soliloquy. It's so funny. All right, let's keep this.
Because I do think that everyone who's interested in JoJo will get the most out of it if they watch and read every part of it, barring there being some aspect of a part that they just can't tolerate, like that one Nazi who's a main character in part 2. I know that's off-putting to a lot of people. I just don't think they need to do it in order. JoJo's parts are designed to work as standalone stories, and while you will miss the context for some plot elements or character moments in any given part that you watch before its predecessors,
like watching Zuko alone without having...
I'm sorry. Yeah. Finish your thing, but I have like 3 things I want to say that.
I think we made it clear enough.
Okay.
How just blatantly he's contradicting himself.
Okay, I need to talk about this because I meant to talk about it and then I forgot, and now I'm like gonna lose my fucking mind if I don't go fucking off about this shit. Okay, so I hate this idea that JoJo's isn't just JoJo's the whole time. Like, yeah, does JoJo's have different kinds of like does JoJo's use different vessels to be JoJo's? Yeah, sure. Part 4 takes place in this one town, right? And part 5 is about gangsters, and part 6 is in a prison, and part 3 is this epic spanning the continent of Asia, and part 7 is a race, and part 1 is like this gothic horror story. They are not different types of series. They aren't. And if you think
because at the end of the day, they are all like action, supernatural, like battle series.
They are written by the same person with the same ideas and the same like core points.
You know what's funny is Mother's Basement is the kind of guy who says Marvel movies are all the same, but then he'll say JoJo Parts are radically different, even though like, yeah, they're all action things that explore like the similar ideas between them because they're part of the same series. What do you fucking know? Haha, Ant-Man's a heist movie and Winter Soldier's a political thriller. Like, no, they're action stories that have some of those elements, just like JoJo is action stories that have some of these other elements in some of their other works, parts. Yeah, okay. But no, JoJo's parts are all super different, and okay.
Like, people who call it an anthology series are just wrong, and I've seen that take a lot. Likening it to something like an anthology series. That is not what at any point JoJo's is ever trying to be, and that is blatantly clear to anyone who actually pays attention and engages with the source material. And so it's ridiculous, and that idea just fucking makes me so mad, because like, okay, if you want to say that part 4 is a little bit different because not every stand user is an enemy, sure, I can agree that there are some interesting moments where they turn the ideas of part 3 on its head by having stand users be good guys, right?
Yeah, well, I was going to bring that up later because Geoff suggests starting with part 4 first in his basement order, but like, the series is called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Part 4 isn't really an adventure story because it takes place in one city, where part 1, they travel around England. Part 2, Joseph travels around the world. Part 3, they travel halfway across the world from Japan to Egypt. Like, because they're adventure stories. But part 4 changes it up a little bit. It's still a battle series. It's still framed around these big long battles of stand battles, but it's not really, it's bizarre, but it's not really adventure. So if you start with part 4, then you're scratching your head wondering why the fuck is this called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure when there's no fucking adventure.
Well, not even that. Like, part 4 is intentionally trying to be kind of a subversion of what JoJo's has been.
Right, like that's one thing I've always appreciated about it, where it's like, I like how, if, you know, even though, like, part 3 is very stand focused, like they fight these enemies who are all largely like evil minion of Dio, and they have this weird stand power, and you have this cool stand battle. But with part 4, one thing I like about it is if you strip away the stands, it's like, Koichi has to deal with this creepy stalker. The Italian restaurant guy the chef sure is creepy and weird. Like, it still, like, works as, like, the premise. There just happens to be stands, which is how I think people compare it to, like, it's the slice of life JoJo part. You know, obviously it's not actually a slice of life, but it still is more, like, grounded, and part of that is because, like, it's adding stand battles to these things that are just normal, you know, and exaggerated, goofy things. But, and that's part of the appeal to it, but that only really, like, comes across if you know the adventure parts where they're having these epic these actual like huge battles, you know, and they're not just like, oh, Koichi has to deal with a fucking like scam artist, you know, like who knocking at his door, like that's become a stand battle. Like it's what's different about part 4 doesn't stand out if you start with part 4, because then it just becomes the normal.
Yeah, there's a, you know, there are other problems. Like, okay, God, this shit's actually like, it just pisses me off to think about. Like, okay, because a lot of what it does is like it takes these ideas and it doesn't completely subvert them and turn them on their head, but it plays with them. And there's a lot of merit to that because, again, if you want to tie it back to humanity, part of the idea of part 4 is that the adventure can come to you, right? And like your life can be, except because, again, stand users kind of just meet with each other, and
right,
and that idea is inherent to part 4 because what that part is saying about humanity is, you know, kind of that your daily life has a, like, not, I guess, daily, because that makes it sound like it's more of a slice of life, but it is this idea of, like, you know, it's using the stands to explain that, you know, there's excitement to be had in a person's normal life.
Well, yeah, and
right?
like even again, all the incidents that it describes, like even if you remove the stand battles, these are still pretty like serial killers. That's about as extreme as you can get in a daily life kind of situation, you know, because it is still this very, like, yeah, it's, you know, K-On! Doesn't have serial killers or scam artists or stalkers, because, you know, that's what, because, like, you know, that it's not JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but, like, it's still very exaggerated and, like, extreme for, you know, if fucking Chuni thinks he's an alien. Like, part 4 is still, yeah, it's still very exaggerated even without the stands, but the stands are there to accentuate that, you know, extremeness of, yeah, the adventure that you can experience in your daily life, potentially.
Right.
So even if, again, it's not like a straight-laced adventure, but that, yeah, again, you only really have that contrast if you're comparing it to the parts that you've already read or watched, you know. Like, we say read because we're more inclined to read manga first, but, you know, if you only watched JoJo, I think that's legitimate, you know, just like, you know, you're just a little behind. There's like 3 more parts that you haven't touched, but hey, you know.
Right. And here's the other thing I want to say about the idea of JoJo's being an anthology series. Something that's like an anthology series has individual episodes that you could watch in any order whenever you want, right? That is kind of the point. And that the episodes are supposed to be related through a similar idea, or maybe even something as basic as, like, it's horror, right? Or, like, from my understanding, I haven't seen Black Mirror, but my understanding of Black Mirror is it's like the point of the show is a lot about, like, technology and a future we could end up. And then they're all completely different episodes that aren't related at all, that, you know, you can just watch. JoJo's is not that at all, because nothing is on. Even the universe reset is in many ways, especially near the end, related to the beginning. Mm-hmm. And has things and ideas and fucking character shit from the beginning. And you cannot, in good faith, call it an anthology series, because that's the opposite. You can't have an anthology series that takes 18 volumes for one part of that anthology. That is not how that shit works.
No, the whole thing is an anthology, Vindy. You can just, like, hit shuffle and read the manga chapters randomly.
God, you're right. People treat JoJo's like it's their Spotify playlist. Who cares if I start with the Sun Part 2? I don't need to see the Sun Part 1. I can go outside and see it.
Yeah, you just read the Sun Part 1, then you read, you know, Dirty Deeds Done Cheap Part 7, and then you hit shuffle again, you hit read, like, yeah, just keep going like that. That'll be it, you know, there'll be so much mystery you have no even idea. But we'll get to that.
That context is never crucial to enjoying the main storyline or to understanding the current cast of characters. Except recurring ones, of course, but besides Joseph in Part 3, they always take on supporting roles anyway. There's even some potential fun to be had in discovering connections between the parts out of sequence, and I think there are some cases where not knowing certain things about past parts can even enhance the power of later story elements.
Like in Zuko Alone.
No, I'm actually, you know, I'll let him. If he wanted to give me an example, I get he wants to be spoiler free because he wants to make it.
No, he does bring up some examples later, but Well, I just wanted to talk about this kind of absurdity of like the artificial mystery, and it's like, yeah, maybe there's a case to be made for it, but also like I sort of poked fun of this in my watch order where I said, what was it? If you just read Zoro versus Kabaji out of context, introduces the mystery of the Rubber Man, the Clown, and what the Devil Fruit are, and then if you start from chapter 1, it explains the mystery of the Rubber Man, the Clown,
Right.
and what the Devil Fruit are.
It would be like it literally is the same as starting Naruto from chapter 2 and being like, well, how did Naruto learn to use shadow clones? That's a mystery, isn't it? Like,
Right. It's not, if it's not intended to be a mystery, it's not a mystery.
It's
and
not
so
supposed
like
to be one.
right.
And
like
if a character doesn't know it, that's called dramatic irony.
like
and
when
it's an
in
important
part
storytelling
5
use.
when Polnareff shows up, you're not supposed to be like, who's this fuckhead? You're supposed to be like, oh look, it's this character I like because I read or watched part 3 and I like Polnareff because everyone likes Polnareff. Like, and then you see him in part 5 and it's like, holy shit, it's Polnareff. He's crippled and now he's a turtle. And it, like, if you haven't read part 3, why the fuck would you give a shit about Polnareff? I don't like. Really? Like, oh, they just get regulated side roles. But yeah, they're side roles with this intertextuality because it's a long story. It's like I've talked about this on the Nen show where it's cool when you're reading a long series and these minor characters show up again, like in Naruto after the pain fight where you see Inari and the old guy from the Country of Waves. And it's like, because you literally haven't seen these guys in hundreds of chapters, but Kishimoto remembers them and included them to contrast, like they're like, where's Sasuke? And then you as the reader recognize them, and it's cool that you both have this long, because you remember, and it's been ages since you read that, because it's again hundreds of chapters. Like that intertextuality is pretty cool. Okay, I like having this long connect. Like that's one of the reasons I love One Piece, because it'll do that shit. Why is JoJo any different?
Right, and something I love that Nun just said, is he said the story is misread for its readers, so skipping doing the mystery than how the writer wrote it is just grossly disrespectful. And I agree. Like, I think that a lot of this just comes down to, like, I know the author's story better than the author. And that's so fucking disrespectful.
Because, like, so many AniTubers are legitimately such shallow thinkers that they legitimately believe that because they've never made anything in their lives. And they don't understand what it's like to write something and build this actual, like, long, even of any decent length, like, story. And
should I be a little mean?
You know what? Fuck it. We probably, if we had any bridges left, it's probably been burnt. Go for it.
All right. You are someone who went to college for game design, could not get a job in the game design industry, and ended up trying to be a games journalist, and then now we're a YouTuber. Who the fuck are you to say you know a manga story better than him? You literally couldn't make something when you tried to and went to school for it.
Okay, that was pretty fucking mean.
I mean, I asked if you want me to be a little mean.
Okay, I wasn't sure what I expected. But no, it's. I mean, I asked for it, but I was just oh damn.
I mean, that's just true too. Like, I'm not lying.
Like, yeah, I fundamentally just do not respect even no matter how good of an anime analysis video, like no matter how much what videos have made me cried versus like no matter how angry I get at like fucking Danganronpa 3 or something like that, I think it's shit. Like on some level, I respect like art a lot, because like I know that like because fundamentally like when I make a video, it's deriving from this other thing. Like it cannot exist without that other thing, and like even if it captures that part of experience, it's still reliant on that thing for the people who watch it. So I like on some value I on some level do not value that kind of thing compared to an actual piece of art. So, and again, as someone who has written stuff and is writing things, like I haven't written in a while, but right now, and every chapter I write or I gain more respect for the people who make these things, and to not have that respect just is very indicative of someone who hasn't made anything. Like, and again, like even I'm not gonna say like, oh, I enjoy the worst art better than the best analysis video, because that's obviously not true. But like, I still try to respect even the stuff I don't like, because that's just how I approach art and media. Because like, that's also just how I found some of my favorite things, because I watched them and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just watch Aikatsu, I'll just watch Kira Kira Precure a la mode, and then I fucking get blown away because I start respecting the art, like looking at it and seeing it on its own merits and what it's doing, and finding stuff I never would have fucking expected, and like legitimately changing how I like read into things and view things, because anything can have something interesting or cool that I wouldn't have thought about if I didn't try to respect it and view it on its own terms, and I'm not seeing that here. Geoff doesn't want to do that. Not with Japan, not with its media. He just does it's just no respect. He has this narrative, he's got to push. And that's, I guess, all that matters. So,
which is why, inspired by the now famous machete order for Star Wars, I've come up with my own basement order for JoJo. I'll give that to you now so that anyone who's watching this and wants to try JoJo out this way can stop the video and do so without being spoiled. Then I'll explain why I made the choices I did. For the basement order.
So I want to stop this really quickly, and this is just to explain the point of the machete order, which is really interesting that he brings that up as a good example, because what I think is so interesting about that example is that outside of one switch, which is one movie being pushed back later in the order that it should be, the machete order is actually pretty much release order for Star Wars.
Yeah, you're right.
And he was talking about, I think sometimes release order is not the best way. Then you know what? If you wanted to say release order is not the best way, why aren't you advocating watching the Star Wars movies 1 through 9, right?
And chronological order, right? Which also doesn't make sense, because like if you do that, then you like when you start episode 4 and you're like, oh, Luke Skywalker, oh, the son of Anakin Skywalker. Well, yeah, obviously everyone knows the Darth Vader twist, but like even if they know it, do they know how Luke reacts to it? Do they know like what kind, like it still has this effect that you wouldn't get if you just watched 1 through 3,
Right.
Like and then before you watched 4 and 5, which is, so it's like, like, and then I'm sure there's other setting stuff that I'm not thinking of right now, but
for example, the machete order is not meant to be someone's first exposure to Star Wars.
Right.
The machete order was always created as a rewatch order, because Star Wars are movies. There's something that, unlike, like you mentioned, it's 40 hours of television to get caught up to part 5. Most people won't rewatch JoJo's after watching it, right? Mm-hmm. Some people will, but a lot won't. They'll wipe their hands of the series, because 40 hours is a lot of time. Star Wars is, especially when it was 6 movies, is way less time than that.
It's still 6 movies, depending on who you ask.
Right. But yeah, like it's movies, so it's meant to be a way to rewatch it, to change it, right? And if that's how you were broaching this, as a way to rewatch JoJo's, if you were curious to see maybe the series in a different way, that's fine. Your order would be terrible, but at least it's not meant to get people into it, which is not what the machete order's trying to do.
Right, rewatching something in a different, like Kitamari's sketch, rewatching that, I want to do it, because I want to rewatch it in a chronological way, because reading the manga is one way to do that, because that was how it was written, but the anime adds things that would look different when viewing it in that chronological way. Or the Marvel movies. I would never suggest someone watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first time chronologically, because, you know what? Maybe, Captain America, Captain Marvel is not like a good second or third Marvel movie to watch. Like, right. That's just absurd, because it relies on this context of knowing Nick Fury, of knowing the Avengers, of knowing where their arcs have gone, and throughout the phases 1 and 2. So you can't just watch Captain Marvel, but if you want to watch it chronologically, like rewatching it, sure, that sounds interesting, because there's some little, changes you get to see, but not
Same
as
thing
your
with,
first time through.
Monogatari. You should not watch Monogatari chronologically your first time at all.
No, that's so stupid. Well, Monogatari is an interesting case also because of the it's adapted from light novels, and where Shaft wasn't able to adapt it in they definitely want people to, because and that's another thing, going back to the reading culture, where it's like when Monogatari, like Kizu didn't come out for like years until after Monogatari came out, even though like this stuff it adapted was referencing stuff that people would know from Kizu. But in Japan, you could just go pick up the book at the store.
I will say, at least with Monogatari, while yes, Kizu is really important, they did a good job recapping what you would need, like making it palatable in the anime, right? And like Kizu is just one thing, and like while Kizu is extremely important, a lot of what Monogatari tells as an anime is stuff built off Bakemonogatari, right? And the relationship that Araragi makes with everyone that's not Shinobu.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I would say is that, like, people definitely super enjoyed Monogatari even without that context, but, like, if you're going to talk about it and understand it, then not only
Right.
should you have watched Kizu Monogatari, but going into it now, there's no reason not to watch it earlier.
Yeah.
And another point, just because this is usually brought up in discussion, is Shaft intended to release it like this. Well, if they intended you to not watch it in light novel order, then they would have not have put Hana Monogatari, which came out months after the second Monogatari second season aired, or second series. They would not intend you to watch it in the middle. They would not intend you to watch the TV series, stop halfway, wait for Hana Monogatari to come out months later, and then finish the TV series. Even though they packaged that way in their DVDs. They want you to read it in the light novel order, because of course they do, because they respect the intent of the author whose work they're adapting, even if, like, again, the production didn't match that. But, you know, and also I think another part of it is actually cataloging things. Like with JoJo, if you go on my anime list, they're all split into 6 parts. There's 8 parts, but it wasn't published as 8 parts, you know, so it looks different. And,
like,
you know,
the parts are called different parts, but it's the same way that Naruto has a part 1 and part 2. It's still all Naruto.
Right. And which, yeah, and so with JoJo, it's like it's still all JoJo, but yeah, so it's again, I think, like, because again, people, it's again not respecting that how it was done in the original country. And in the case of, like, yeah, we really read things digitally, most of it, especially us who don't, you know, like, yeah, I have a bookshelf of manga, you have manga that you own, but we don't, like, that's not the primary way we consume it, because that's not affordable. There's not nearly as much available compared to digitally, and
It
so
takes longer to do, yeah.
And so Monogatari is similar, where it's like, yeah, we can't just go, Bakuman is good, I'm gonna go read all the light novels. Like, now you can kind of start to do that because they're finally getting published, because it's a popular series and it was already popular. But it's like, again, it's different. So anyway, that's off topic.
The one last order I want to bring up, just so we don't get people talking about it, is Haruhi. And here's all I'll say about Haruhi, and I think that there's a big difference with the way people talk about Haruhi, and why I would say both ways to watch Haruhi are actually valid.
Yeah.
Is because the light novels, the original version of the story, was in chronological order, and when KyoAni adapted it and released second season, they came up with broadcast order, right?
Right. Because one is the order, like, as intended by the original author, and the second is the order KyoAni intended as a TV season. So they're paced differently to account for that. So it's like, and because we talked about this, I think, with Overlord, where it's like, and with a lot of light novel adaptations, you can really tell where the novels begin and end. And with Haruhi, yeah, if you watch in the chronological order, that's the case. But in the TV order, it's not that simple. But that's because they wanted the climax to land in the last episodes, which, you know, and yeah, I agree. Both orders are valid, because, you know, one is like as the original was, and one is like as deliberately transformed in the anime. Just like for Hidamari Sketch, first time I'd say go through it the anime order. But if you're gonna rewatch it, sure, do the chronological. You know, but it's like, and that's an exception. Well, another order I was gonna bring up was Fate. Mostly because it's like, I actually don't like, well, because the anime is like, I don't know how the anime is.
I would actually say for Fate, it has to be, like, I actually am not even going to say that there's another order that's okay. I think Fate should always be the VN and then 0. I think there's no fucking debate.
So VN 0 and then kind of whatever, because that's kind of my understanding.
Yes, because after VN and 0, it like, you get things that are kind of derivative of the VN, like you have like Prisma Ilia, where like it kind of takes characters and ideas.
Right, like once
VN
you get through Fate and Zero, you know all the context, you know, of the core of the story, and then you recognize all the recurring characters. So at that point, you know, mostly anything should be fine, you know.
But I would say that, like, it's actually and the Dean anime and the 2 Unlimited Blade, or the 2 UFO Table movies, are not substitutes for that fucking VN, and they never will be. You cannot turn a, like, 30-hour route, or probably 15-20-hour VN route, into 3 movies and act like that's acceptable at all.
Yeah. Well, and that's just a general problem with VN adaptations in general, because, like, yeah, is Steins Gate a good adaptation? Yeah. Does it miss a bunch of stuff from the VN? Absolutely. Because especially one thing that you really can't adapt very well, or at least very easily, is internal narration.
Yes.
And I've heard that's an issue with Fate. That's 100% an issue in Chaos Head. It's 100% an issue in Chaos Child, where, like, you have all the like, you're in the head of the main character, like, the entire time. And I haven't played Steins Gate in a while. Pretty sure it's an issue there too. It probably is with Robotics Notes. Did I enjoy Robotics Notes at watching it as an anime adaptation? Yeah. Is the VN probably better? Yeah, because like you get to know the main character better because you're in his head and seeing what they're thinking. If it was adapted, like they're not gonna like give them an mental internal monologue for 5 hours. Like, no, they have to get the story done. Right. So it's like
a lot of VNs are stories ultimately about the main character and the way that they see things and what they feel about the
right.
world
So
around
even
them.
aside from Roots, which I do think it's interesting that Fate will just like adapt different Roots. You know, I'm not going to watch it because if I'm going to go through it, I'm going to go through the VN. But like, I still think that's interesting, and I don't know of very many other series that do that.
Fate is a little bit different because you have to like when you read a Fate route, at least here. You start like the routes are not all like if you download Fate, right? The routes are different exe files.
Okay,
Like,
I didn't know that.
They're completely different from the beginning. They change things. So it's not the same as like a route in like a key VN.
As I would expect a route to go, where if you finish the common route and then you go to other ones, or you have all these options from the beginning.
I would say you can skip at most an hour of Fate. Probably less than that if in the other routes because they change almost immediately.
But generally speaking, what we're listing are exceptions, and generally speaking, episode 1 or chapter 1, like it's not that hard. And JoJo is not. I don't think maybe part 7. You know, because again, like if you struggle to get through part 1, but even then you should still go through the rest. Especially if you like part 7, then that if you still don't like part 7, then okay, drop JoJo. You know, sure. If you watch part 1 and watch part 5, who cares? Okay, yeah, just if you don't like them both, then JoJo's not for you. I'm sorry. It's sad that you don't get to enjoy this thing with everyone else, but you know, maybe come back to it in a few years. Or maybe watch videos and see like what are you gonna do? Get spoiled? Like. You know, if you're not going to watch it, who cares? Like, maybe those spoilers that interest you, you know, again, but that's getting into things in personal enjoyment, which, again, like, is different from, like, discussion and discourse, which, I guess we'll talk about with the basement order.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is, like, again, with JoJo's, that's different from the one, like, the one big one we said that there are acceptable different orders is that Haruhi was adapted in different orders, right? Haruhi had 2 different versions of it that came out in 2 different orders. The people making JoJo's are adapting it in the same order as the manga. Yeah. So you don't have, like, that reasoning. Okay, we should actually move on, though.
Order, you start with Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable, then watch Part 2, Battle Tendency, which starts at Episode 10 of Season 1. After that, you jump to Part 5, Golden Wind, followed by the first season of Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, and after Episode 24 of that, you finally hop back to watch Part 1, Phantom Blood, and cap the anime off with the Battle in Egypt arc of Part 3. Then you can read Part 6 of the manga, Stone Ocean. 7 and 8 are in their own continuity, so you can worry about those separately, but you really should read them because they are the best parts of JoJo, hands down. Now, here's the rationale for why I put the parts in this order. The story of JoJo is a story of long-standing family legacy, but that legacy is fractured by tragic circumstance, by familial estrangement, and by hidden infidelity, such that no JoJo is fully aware of their inherited destiny until it calls upon them. By watching the series in this sequence, we're able to discover the Joestar legacy alongside the characters who are unwittingly swept up in it, and thus better relate to them and their confusion and curiosity before going back to see how it all began. In Part 4, for instance, a defining aspect of Josuke's character is the fact that his father is a total stranger to him. And by starting here, we get to meet Joseph Joestar as he does, seeing him first as a doddering old fool before slowly discovering his true heroic nature through his actions. This sets us up for an exciting reveal when we finally get to see Joseph in his prime in Part 2, and there's a neat bit of narrative symmetry in jumping back from one time his wallet was stolen to another. I also chose Part 4 to start because Jotaro explains how stands work in the first episode, and while it's not as metaphysically comprehensive as the exposition at the start of Part 3, it absolutely gets the job done.
Okay, so just to talk about what he said there, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he does that I really disagree with is this idea he gave of
relating to the characters by starting with the mystery, or like having the same
no,
perspective.
okay, yeah. So I think that idea of like the lineage is fractured, like he's kind of already dismissing part of one of the core themes of the series to fit his agenda, but that's less a big a deal. Is like Joseph is not supposed to be a mystery to the reader. He is not. You are supposed to know who he is because, again, it's supposed to be like, wow, Joseph's really gotten fucking old when he's this bumbling idiot. And then when he cuts his arm in the baby, you're like, there's the Joseph I know. And it's like supposed to be kind of a moment of a flash of who he used to be, but you are supposed to know who he used to be. Right.
And like, and my thing with it is like, he's saying like, oh, maybe you like the series better if you are more ignorant. And you know what, Jeff? Maybe I'm a freak, but I don't like being ignorant. I like to know what I'm talking about. I like to know what I'm watching. You know, like I've even been told like oh, Black Mirror new season. I'm like, maybe you should watch it. I'm like, well, I'd rather watch from the beginning, and that's an actual anthology series. But like the fact that I might not know something, like that does kind of bother me sometimes. And sometimes, and yeah, not all the time. Like yeah, I watched Ultraman Geed, which continues this conflict from a trilogy of films which introduced the characters of Ultraman Zero and Ultraman Belial, and they recur in Ultraman Geed. Did I still enjoy it? Yes. Did I feel like I was missing something? Yeah. And I still need to go back and watch those movies. Did I still really like Ultraman Geed? Yes. But, you know, on some level, like, there's this doubt in my head, and I've even talked to people who have watched those movies, and apparently I wasn't really missing much. But I still want to go back and watch them and make that judgment for myself. And, like, I'm not, you know, I'm gonna say, like, you know, if you watch Geed, you should probably watch the movies first, at least. And of course, it's also, like, it is a little different with Toku stuff because these are these huge franchises and they are meant to be accessible to children. So it's like, it's a little different. Like, even if I'm not going to watch the anniversary series without having watched a bunch of those things, like, yeah, Gokaiger is this big anniversary series for the 35th anniversary of Super Sentai that references a long history that the audience of 7-year-olds that was watching it, you know, even though it also, I'm sure it attracted all these older fans too who remember these old stories, but like it does have to be accessible to these younger audiences, you know. But that's also that's different. That's television. That's you know, these series are meant to be sort of iterative, and like with Ultraman, they'll put out these episode zeros that recap you on what happened before. And again, you do have the ability to go back with DVDs and stuff, but it's like, it's also like 35 years of watching, that's a lot of fucking episodes, you know. We're talking like you know, 30, they're all 50 episode shows, so it's like, yeah, but again, different medium and different target audience, like, because Shonen Jump's target audience is more in the like 10 to 18 range. You know, they're older, and manga doesn't take as long to read, because, you know, like, again, to compare it, like part 3 is 50 episodes. Every fucking season of Super Sentai except for like one is in the range of like 50 episodes. So it's like, yeah, it's a major difference, but it's like, but I still, you know, that context can matter, and I still want that context, even though, like, yeah, I'm sure I'd love Gokaiger if I just watched it, but I'd love it more if I watched it with all the context. What do you know? But that's me and my taste, and this is something I will talk to later, and I kind of already brought it before. But anyway, forget if I had anything else to say.
I think I did have something else to say. 1 second. Oh, yeah, well, okay. So, to go back to his point about the fractured lineage, JoJo's is set up in such a way where you are already introduced to the previous Joestar, and that is by design. Because it is supposed to be this thing where, like, I agree, he's right in the sense that, like, you're with these Joestars who don't know about their lineage until they get swept up in it, right? But I'll make an argument for why it's good if you know the people sweeping them up. You know? It's that if you know the person coming in to sweep them up, right? If you know Jotaro, if you know Speedwagon, if you know Joseph, you get this feeling of the familiar coming into the unknown. You're starting with this character who's unknown, and they're just living their life. And the Joestar lineage finds them and pulls them into the world, as opposed to something just randomly happening. It's supposed to be this thing where the world that you know and that you're supposed to already know envelops these characters, and they become a part of that world, as opposed to a world you don't know envelops a character you don't know. Then you don't know anything. So it's just Okay.
In battle tendency, again, we're put in a similar position to Joseph and to a lesser extent Caesar, learning about Hamon as they do and knowing their ancestors only through the stories Granny Arena and Speedwagon tell about them. And then when we get into part 5, we, like Giorno, know next to nothing about his father, Dio, besides the fact that he was a really bad dude and also a vampire who set this whole stand arrow business in motion way back when. Dio doesn't really factor into the Gangstar saga anyway, at least not until the end when Polnareff gets involved, and curiosity about him makes for a great narrative bridge into part 3. Now obviously by starting Stardust Crusaders near the end of the series, we do undercut the big reveal of what Dio and Jotaro's powers are, but frankly, I think the ship has kinda sailed on people being surprised by time stopping in JoJo, and besides that, this viewing order leaves the mystery of Dio himself intact. We feel his influence, but we don't get to know him directly as a character until we jump back in time to his origin story when the Crusaders at last reach Egypt.
So real quick, we've already talked about a lot of this already, but one thing specifically I said, like, yeah, a lot of people probably know about Dio's time stop. They might not know about Jotaro's time stop.
Because it's always the world, not Star Platinum the world.
Right. So that is a twist that still like has like surprise value when it's revealed. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Also, I'm actually gonna say this now because I just realized what he's doing, and I'm so fucking amazed that he thought he could get away with it. He didn't come up with this because he actually thinks this is a good way to use it. I mean, he brought up the machete order. He should just actually tell you why you should watch the machete order instead. Because what he's doing is, again, so for those who don't know the machete order, I'm going to explain it really quickly. You watch episodes 4 and 5, which lead into Luke and lead into Darth Vader. At the end of episode 5, you find out that Luke is Darth Vader's father. So that means that now you finally find out that the two people, that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader, are the same person. So now you go back and you watch 1, 2, and 3 to find out how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. Then you watch episode 6, right? And the idea is supposed to be that you keep this mystery of who Darth Vader is, and then you find out, and then you get to see that, and you go into 6. The reason people started the machete order is not because they actually thought that was an interesting way to watch.
Yeah,
Star Wars.
episode 6 sucks, so you should just skip it and watch the prequels first. Like, no, that's not why they did it.
The reason they did is because episodes 1, 2, and 3 are fucking dog shit movies, and people didn't want to ask others to watch them. So they're like, here, if you want to watch all of Star Wars, this is a more palatable way. Because you can watch 4 and 5, get the fuzzy, nice feelings you get when you watch Star Wars, right? Get, like, blasted and watch 1, 2, and 3, and then you've come down by 6, right? Like, that's the idea behind the machete order. Is it is supposed to be a more palatable way to watch 3 dog shit movies by a creator who forgot what his series was about. Okay? They were not ways to experience a story that got better as it went.
Well, yeah, and like another thing I want to say about his order is that it's purely speculative, and it's like, you know what I would have respected, even if like I still think a lot of this video is kind of head ass, is if he actually found someone, like multiple people who aren't like that stupid, and got them in, tried to get them into JoJo through this order, and saw what the results are. Because like when you've talked about Mahler's Dark Souls 2 video, and how like he had his friends play the game to get these other perspectives and these other like, you know, reactions to weird bugs and stuff, and got to understand Dark Souls 2 better through other people playing it. So maybe Geoff would have understand what he's saying better if he had other people, someone else, if he was watching it with them, maybe, or just something like that to someone who, again,
right.
Yeah.
And I just realized why he couldn't have done that.
I know why too, but go ahead, or see if we have the same reason.
He made this video in a week because he was upset he got called out on Twitter.
Right.
That is what
that's exactly it. Yeah.
It just clicked with me that this entire video is him saying, y'all were mean to me on Twitter, so I'm gonna try to explain why y'all are wrong for being
I mean, you can tell because the script is like overly long and awkward at times and self-contradicting, and
this is his temper tantrum.
The editing isn't very good. Like he literally like lingered on that one article of the Avatar episode, Zuko's Alone episode, for like at least 30 seconds. Like
he has gone back to this one scrolling JoJo's back. I mean, he doesn't edit his videos, but his editor's gone back to this one thing like 10 times.
Yeah, like I don't know who edited this one, but it's like, you know, probably didn't have a lot of time to do it. And yeah, once you say it's like, oh, you made fun of me on Twitter, it's like, yeah, that's kind of why this video happened, isn't it?
Curiosity about who Dio was and how he became who he is will hopefully be strong enough at this point to push viewers through the slow start of Phantom Blood, which should also feel a bit more tense overall since we know what the mask does going into it. This flashback also serves to break up the repetitive fist fight of the week formula that defines Stardust Crusaders, which can get a bit tedious when stretched across 48 straight episodes.
I just don't understand this idea that, yeah, if you know what these things you're not supposed to know what they do, then it's more tense.
No, yeah, I kind of talked about the artificial mystery being dumb a while ago.
But he's doing the opposite of artificial mystery, he's like artificial dramatic irony.
Oh, that's that.
That's because that's what he's talking about with the mask. Is like, oh well, we know what the mask does, so it's really tense when he puts it on. Isn't dramatic irony great? But like, JoJo's has built in both mystery and dramatic irony in them, and they are there for a reason with the things they are there with for a reason, and you are taking all of it and flipping it and saying, look, haha, this is the inverse, isn't it so cool? Like, no.
But it makes him sound smart.
He's basically like advocating for experiencing the series opposite of what it's intended to be and saying that this is good.
In my opinion, anyway. Theoretically, this order should turn the rough viewing experience of both parts into a much smoother ride to the grand finale of Dio's world, which is still, in my opinion, one of the best goddamn fights in this series and should make for a heck of a satisfying finale to it. From there, if you're so inclined, you can go on to read Stone Ocean or otherwise wait for it to be animated. Either way, you'll be primed to enjoy it as a celebration of everything you've watched so far, and as a more direct continuation of Dio and Jotaro's respective legacies. So, is this basement order the truly definitive way to watch JoJo? Of course not, and also, that's not really the point of this thought exercise. What I hope I've demonstrated with it is that there can be pros and cons to either watching the series in release order or shaking things up, and you won't necessarily enjoy it less if you watch it out of sequence. Depending on the order, you may even get to enjoy some satisfying setups and payoffs that don't exist in the linear JoJo timeline. And that's not only true of this watch order. Obviously, not every possible random approach you can take to JoJo, or any other massive franchise for that matter, will deliver as smooth a ride as something planned out by someone who knows the material, or the standard chronological order, but that's where you, as a JoJo fan, can help your friends find a way of tackling the series that works for them and is still satisfying overall.
Okay, I have a few things, because I noticed something about this order, but also I want to talk about what you just...
Well, one thing I want to mention, because it says, you should listen to someone who knows the material. You know who knows the material better than anyone in the entire world?
The creator.
Huh. You know what did he say about the order again? Maybe you should start with part 1. Maybe you skip to part 7 because it was intended to be, like, readable. Oh, right. Yeah. Huh. Funny that. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, so okay. That's funny, but also it's like, he's talking about, like this time he's like, oh, without watching in chronological order. Okay, I get that JoJo's is totally in chronological order, but there's a difference between chronological order and release order by, like, concept. And while I would say that, yeah, maybe not all series need to be done in chronological order, I would then say that all series should be experienced in release order, most likely. Right? And
I think release order honestly is more like probably the ideal order to go through, because then you're going through it at the same pace the creators went through.
Right. And that's, again, what to go back to Haruhi, which I think is a really interesting discussion in this. Haruhi has 2 release orders, right? There's the novel release order and the anime release order that are different inherently, unlike with something like Monogatari, which, as you mentioned, had production issues that caused it to have the release order it does, right?
Right, and also just the medium, with Monogatari's second series is could they have adapted Hana Monogatari as a TV series? Yeah, but then they would have had to cut out, I think the last arc was Our Monogatari, which is now the TV season has less of a climax, so it's they're making concessions for the medium, but then they're fixing it the DVDs, which is also part of like Bakemonogatari had like horrible like production at times. Like there's one episode that was like basically like 90% like inner stills and text and like blank images of and characters talking, because like they didn't like the DVD and Blu-ray release is the intended order, is the intended way to see the series, and most Western fans watched that because that's when it didn't look like Shaft kind of had, it was kind of infamous for some of its production in that like late, like before, you know, before Bakemonogatari was super successful and Madoka was super successful, like before, you know, like early the TV episodes of Hidamari Sketch didn't look very good either at times. You know, so like, yeah, but again, these are exceptions, you know, not the rule.
Right. And yeah, I mean that's it. And then I love how this order is a way to watch the anime, because he just put 6, 7, and 8 at the very end because
there's no anime, right? Yeah.
Because there's no anime for him, so why would he try to work them in? People don't like manga. You read the manga after you've seen the anime because you don't want to wait for an anime. That's the only Craftsdwarf, that's the only purpose that a manga for an anime adaptation serves. Why would you read the manga instead? Fucking ridiculous. But he's talking about the anime for all of them and has manga volume covers?
Yeah, that's I realized that too. Huh. Maybe it's because the manga volume covers look better. Because, you know, manga art 9 times out of 10 looks better than the anime art, like a screenshot of it, because, you know, our anime is meant to be viewed in animation. And also manga art, there's just less drawings in a manga compared to the mass amount of drawings by a huge team in anime production. So, like, the individual drawings just look better. What do you know?
I also think an interesting thing to point out that he very easily could have just fucking made a video saying to read part 7 and 8, and he could have even used proof he has on screen right now, but he's too stupid for that. Which is, when you look at Steel Ball Run, what do you see? You see volume 23, and then for JoJolion you see 16, and those started count over. That wasn't the case with any of the other volumes.
I think part 6 and maybe part 5 did. Yeah, they did restart the count, didn't. But maybe. But
part 5 didn't, because I posted one.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah. But part 6, because you can even see it says volume 14 right there.
Oh, you're right. I didn't see that 6 restarted the count. Okay, never mind.
I don't know why, because like he even says that it's like more lore heavy, and you know, so maybe. Yeah, I've heard rumors, like, because I've never seen anything confirmed, so I don't want, you know, I almost don't want to say it because I don't. But like basically part 6 was not well received when it ran, so like, and which is part of why why he started Steel Ball Run, because Jump was like no more JoJo's basically, and so like, but then it became JoJo, which is why I think it's weird, because it's like, like was it a big gotcha for Jump, but he went to a Jump aligned magazine, so I don't understand basically why like part 6 was, because maybe the count was there to restart and maybe try and get new readers, like, but even if the content of the part was again very, you know, like at least compared to part 5, you know, more reliant on that older material. And then, so yeah, it's like, yeah, because that's exactly, like, there were better ways to go about this video if you just want people to get into JoJo, and that is talk more about why part 1 is great and explain it in ways that maybe don't spoil it, but are still like, but you know, Geoff doesn't think it's that great. Okay, sad. Or just start with part 7, get more people in the manga, because manga is a good medium, and often, and like, you know, more adaptations than not are not better than the manga.
Right.
And maybe get it, if Geoff even thinks, like, even though he got into JoJo through the anime, he says part 7 and 8 are the best. He likes the manga better. Why not do a video trying to get people into the manga? Yeah. You know, and that would have, like, I would honestly have preferred that, even though, yeah, I do think you should go through parts 1 and 6, but like, I would have preferred just, you know, yeah, read part 7 and 8, catch up. Because then you can get on the current discussion, you'll be into it, and now, because like what he said earlier, you like JoJo, you like things you like, now you have like 6 more parts to go back to, you know? Is it the ideal way? Probably not, but I think it would be better, like, I think both of those would have been better than this, where he had to, like, contradict himself and misunderstand the industry and the culture and the work that he's discussing. Like, he went about this in the worst way possible, basically.
Yeah.
If you can get past the idea that there's this one perfect way they have to go about it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The more JoJo you have in your life, the better. So the best approach to exploring the series, in my opinion, is whatever gets you the most excited about it. Even if that means you only ever watch the Handsome Mafia Variety Hour or Scooby Hairdo and fill in the blanks with a wiki. Or you go full chaotic evil and exclusively read the light novels. Honestly, I'd love to hear what someone who does that thinks of JoJo, and the same goes for anyone who's experienced the series differently from me. Hearing varying perspectives on things I like only ever enhances my own appreciation of them. That's a big part of why I make these videos and still read the comments despite the advice of my peers. And that is the single best reason I can give my fellow JoJo fans to not only let part skippers be and let them join your conversations about it, but also to straight up encourage people who might side-eye the series for its length or the pushier parts of its fanbase to ignore what they're supposed to do and help them enjoy JoJo in a way that makes sense to them. The bigger and more varied this fanbase gets, the more interesting it'll be for all of us who take part in it.
All right. So that was the end of the video. We're kind of tired. This is the longest EWB that wasn't about, a YouTuber whose name starts with P and ends with shitty racist bitch.
It was also a stream with
right.
5 people on it.
Yeah. And a longer video, but
yeah. Okay.
So I kind of agree with what he's saying. Is there there's no ideal order that's going to get everyone into JoJo, because at the end of the day, JoJo is just not for anyone. Or not for everyone, rather. Not for anyone. No one should read it or watch
I respect that take.
Just drop it. Just it's trash. Even I don't know. But yeah, and but at the same time, I definitely think if you've gone through it this interesting way and have interesting things to say, sure. If you've gone through it a different way and you just have head-ass stupid takes, I don't care what you think, honestly. Maybe, yeah, because, again, they're, do people have wrong opinions? Technically, if they're talking about the actual opinions, no, because, liking JoJo or not liking JoJo are both valid opinions. But if you have stupid fucking reasons for your opinion, then it's a wrong opinion. But that requires you to take part in the discussion and talk about it and explain why, and that's where I can say, well, you're wrong about it, or have you considered it like this? That's part of the discussion. So it's I get that, again, he's trying to get people into JoJo, but he just does it in the dumbest, most head-ass way possible. The only way he could have done worse is be more insulting to again, this imagined idea of people who you have to go through in the order, and it's I don't think that, but I think most people are going to enjoy it that way and I think again, that's the way Araki intended you to go through it. So if you intend to respect the art you engage with, why would you not at least try that order? Because again, if you drop it, I don't care what you do after that, because you're already not into it. If you happen to get into it after that through whatever hat-ass thing, great. Because now you can be a fan, because otherwise that might, I don't know, but again, this is where you go I talked about this before, it's personal, you would talk to your friends, and again, like you said, watch with them, or, engage with them in the unique way that they get into it, and so, what does creating a basement order help with? Why this order? He said some things, and like you said, it just, flips, the dramatic irony becomes, mystery, and the mystery becomes dramatic irony, it just flips it, and it's isn't that neat? And it's sure, I don't. And I think we had a lot of issues, and we gave a lot of examples, far more cons. There seems to be more cons than there are positives. Because at the end of the day, the only positive is, did they get into JoJo or not? Or is someone getting someone into JoJo who wouldn't, or otherwise? And again, there's no data for if the basement order works or not, because he made this video in a week, and that's way too quick to watch JoJo. Do you have anything to say?
I have quite a bit to say, actually. I finally figured out what bothers me so much about this video, and the way he talks about things, and it's that I actually believe almost nothing he says in this video. That he actually thinks that. There's so much of this, like, trying to be friendly and, oh, I'm saying these things, but it's just my opinion, and, you know, oh, I just want more discussion in general on everything because all discussion's good and interesting and I care about what everyone says. Like, no, I don't believe for a second that he actually believes any of that bullshit. That is the most pandering, trying to act like you're so open-minded and special. Dude, shut the fuck up. I know that if you saw someone saying Sword Art Online was a 10 out of 10, you would write them off and laugh at them. Probably to the people around you. Probably to someone in, like, a private Twitter DM or a Discord conversation, right? Because that's how fucking everyone... it won't just come out and fucking directly say shit is. Okay? I know that you think there are bad takes. I know you don't believe that all discussion's good and it makes me appreciate the things I love more. That's not fucking true. Most of the things you probably see in your comments, you're like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And then just don't read anymore.
Well, given the lack of hearts in those top comments, you know.
Yeah. And people were making good points. And if he really thought about the interesting, he would heart comments that disagree with them. But he doesn't. All he does is pretend like he does. And pretend like, oh, like, look, if you're just like, okay, I like the idea that subjectivity is implied in what people say. They don't have to say, because, again, there's, like, a difference between objective language and subjective language, right? But also there is this level of, if he was just like, yeah, the best fight in the series, fucking Jotaro versus Dio, right? Like, okay, obviously, that's his opinion, right? That can't be objectively proven as the best fight in the series. Mm-hmm. And, like, is it objective language? Sure. But it's different than just calling something bad, because you can make points to show that something is or isn't bad. You can't really make points to show that something is or isn't the best fight in the series. And so, like, but he's like, in my opinion, right? Because he's trying to hide behind this idea of, like, oh, everyone's opinion matters, and you're just being a gatekeeper if you disagree, because you're telling people that their opinion and their subjective experiences of things are wrong. And I just love hearing all opinions, and you fucking don't. And that's clearly a lie, because there is no person on earth who says any of that bullshit about just listening to other opinions for anything other than to make themselves sound smart.
Yeah. Like, I was thinking, like, I don't listen to opinions. I don't look at my comments. Like, yeah. I sometimes, like, oh, I gotta read the fucking Weeb Club comments, or sometimes, like, I'm enjoying the Kaneko on Nensho comments, but there have been times where I'm just like,
Well, I like reading comments, because I think well,
we have smaller audiences on those two specific, too. True. Like, this is Mother's Basement. Like, you know, the fact that he reads comments and he probably gets, like, I mean, you know, well, then again, you know, there's dipshit takes that he's likely to agree with, and there's reason, like, you know, then there's this comment section where everyone's, like, shitting on him and he's not liking it. So, you know? Right.
And like, you clearly care, like, here's the thing. The entire video is you upset because you got called out on Twitter. You clearly care about the quality of discussion of series. That is why you make videos. It is not to get ideas out there and further discussion. It is to get your point to be heard and people to agree with you, and either give them an outlet to explain themselves that can get your word out to more people, or is to get people to change their mind and agree with you. That's why people will make videos on hot takes. It's not to just further discussion. It's to get people to stop and think and be like, oh, maybe his hot take's kind of right. You know what I mean? Like, that's why fucking people do it, okay? You're not some fucking Gandhi of anime. Stop with this bullshit. It's not real. It's clearly fake. Everyone can tell it's fake. You're just like, it's such a fucking pussy move. Just be honest and just say your fucking mind and like, just be honest. It's insane to me. I actually can't stand this shit. And it was bothering me this whole video. I'm going on this long ass rant about it because it was bothering me this whole video. I was like, what the fuck is, like, this fucking little voice in the back of my fucking mind that's, like, just setting me off every time he fucking opens his mouth. And I realized it. It's how fucking fake every fucking word he says is, because he'll say something that he actually thinks and they go, or, like, he'll say something that he believes and then just go, oh, that's my opinion. Or he'll say something that, like, he actually thinks and then go, oh, but, you know, that's just one school of thought. Oh, everything's valid. Like, I know you don't believe that because of the way you were talking about everything before it. Yeah. It's just hypocrisy everywhere, and I can't fucking stand it.
No, right. Like, again, it's a video you made in a fucking week. You slapped the script together, you voiced it, sent it out there, didn't, you know, it's not very well thought out. It's and I think the subject matter in particular gets touchy with people because, like, you know, when you watch a series, like, that's your experience with it. That's something, you know, and you want people, like, you know, like, because I've even mentioned where it's like, you know, people are like, I mean, on my server, you know, I've been around these people long enough that they don't feel the need to, like, hey, Crafts, you should watch Gintama, you know, where, because, like, they want, and no, actually, yeah, that's something, like, Prince just, for another, you know, he was like, you should read Jagan, and I'm like, okay, and I don't know if I'm going to read it, but, like, people want me to read the thing or watch the thing that they like, so that, you know, because on some level, like, they, you know, they like me and my stuff, and they want to, on some level, like, even with friends, it's like, it validates you when someone else likes what you like, so they want you to get into it too. But when it comes to watch order, like, because now the way you experience something becomes how you like that, and so, you know, I could see, like, with the Monogatari TV series watch order, like, that's what a lot of people, that was their experience. So when people come in and they're watching, because I've seen people tweet, like, oh, you shouldn't watch Kizu Second, like, the intended order, because that wasn't their experience. But it's like, and the defense for that was like, oh, but you won't have the feeling of, like, watching Kizu while caring about all these characters. And I'm like, but you would if you rewatched the whole thing after, like, if you rewatched Kizu after watching all of Monogatari, like,
right.
The pros seem to outweigh the cons. But anyway, it's like, I guess people get so uppity about the watch orders because, like, oh, they experience it a certain way, so therefore everyone should experience it a certain way, and if they don't experience it that way, then they might have a bad experience. And
or I think the other thing is that, like, people don't like feeling like, if I told, like, if someone watched a show backwards, right? They watched every episode in the other order, but they really enjoyed that show, and it was one of their favorite shows. And
yeah,
I said,
you invalidate their experience.
Right, they
right.
feel like everything that they feel about it is invalidated.
Right, like, yes, because people watched Monogatari wrong and got into it wrong, like, somehow someone else watching Kizu earlier than they got the chance to, like, yeah, that would invalidate their experience, so they feel this need to, like, push against that, even though, like, that's kind of absurd. And that's another part of the reason why I made my One Piece watch order, because, like, the way I got into One Piece is fucking absurd. Like, why the fuck do I like it? You know, like, I would never push my watch order on some, even though that is my personal experience that only I went through. I hope, please God, don't undo the order. But it's like, but that's, legitimately, like, how I became a fan of One Piece. And yeah, I dropped Skype in anime and manga. I skipped it. I just started, like, I was watching on YouTube and I'm like, oh, hey, new episodes. Like, I'm just going to watch from this random episode that should have been recommended in, like, Water 7. I have no fucking clue what's going on, but I know these characters, I guess. Like, and yeah, I love One Piece, but I wouldn't expect someone to go through it like that.
Right.
And yeah, generally speaking, I'm going to go through things from the beginning, especially now. Like, I realize I haven't dropped an anime since, in months, like, honestly. But I don't know, it's just like, yeah, I guess it is something people, like, guard pretty closely, even though, like, so at least, like, in that case, like, Geoff is, he is saying, like, I want to see different watch orders, but, like, but also this video isn't being well received, so it's just a food for thought, I suppose, because I've been thinking about that lately, especially with Monogatari, because Monogatari is, like, a unique case here, so... Right. But I'm about out of things to say. So
I have nothing. I had things I think I wanted to say, but that rant about how fucking fake all that shit is took everything out of me.
Yeah, and we already said a lot. This is, like I said, the longest EWB. So
yeah, anything else that we forget isn't as important as the points we've made, and would only serve to prove our points further. But we don't need to prove our point. We made a very good point of.
No, I think we succinctly maybe not succinct, not the best word, but we pretty thoroughly explained why his order doesn't make sense, his takes on the medium, and they don't make sense, and his video contradicts itself. Again, he frames, like, the way he frames it with, like, you have an issue with that, he's your friend, and I have an issue with how the frame, well, we both have an issue with, like, how he'll twist things to fit his narrative, and it's not a good video, it's not a good take, it's kind of pretty, it's head ass, and I think we already talked enough about, like, yeah, if you want to get into JoJo, just get into JoJo, don't let anyone stop you, don't let anyone say you should do it like this, just do it, just And it should probably be with chapter 1 or episode 1 your first time through at least. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
At least, here's the last thing I'll say, which is if someone really wants to skip a part and do the basement order or whatever, you should always go back and experience it all in the correct order.
Yeah, watch it in the basement order, then go back and read it from the beginning. That way, and give Geoff. I'm sure Geoff would love a comment, even if you say like, "Well, I tried it by your order, but I had this issue," and and maybe some I'm sure Geoff would love it. But obviously we've both experienced JoJo, and I probably wouldn't recommend the basement order, but he even said like he just wants people to get into JoJo, and like I said, I think if that was really his goal, there were better ways to go about it. That wouldn't have ended with this fucking huge like to dislike, or not quite ratioed, but it's definitely way more dislikes than a normal video should get. So,
all right.
Yep. Thank you for listening. Yep, and we'll catch you on the next one.